Hello, hello, this is Summerside Story, and we're back to another Total Drama What If. Or, this time, a sequel to a Total Drama What If I've already done. Yep, that's right, you guys all voted, and the results were going to World Tour, with the Gen 2 cast plus Alejandro and Sierra already established. If you haven't watched the first part, go ahead and watch it. You're going to need to understand key changes that happen alongside the full scope of what happened in Season 2 in order to understand how Season 3 goes down. If you like Total Drama What Ifs, then make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hype the video, and all the stuff that YouTubers make you do. And it's time to begin. Before the season starts, however, we must talk about episode 27 of season 2 or the Celebrity Manhunt special. Most of the catching up with the season 1 cast would remain the same, but there are a few changes. Starting off, thanks to Courtney growing last season, she wouldn't have focused on her lawyers during Duncan and hers relationship. So they are fully a couple before the episode even starts. I know they got back together, but just know they're actually in a stable relationship this time and would be interviewed together. Also, Gwen and Trent are together thanks to no season 2 happening. Beth would have actually talked about her boyfriend during her interview that she met off screen and would have been hanging out with Lindsay, just not in Paris anymore due to her not winning the cash prize or just in general. Everyone else is effectively the same, so we can move on to the new people. Firstly, Sierra, Zoe, Mike, and Cameron would have traveled around the world together, with Courtney being a part of it, and they had a lot of fun together. Though recently they came back to Canada and relaxed and enjoy things at their own pace. Dakota and Sam would be going strong, and Dakota doing her usual modeling stuff, while Sam became an online content creator for his favorite games. B has been making some inventions, selling him with the help of his total drama appearance, giving him some recognition. Alejandro was in competitions in sports, but shown to get second to a mysterious person. Ooh. Joe would join Tyler and Lashana on the reality show gauntlet they went on, so they would actually know each other decently well before the season starts. Don would be helping animals at a nature reserve, Stacy and Scott would just be on their respective homes, and lastly, Brick got disowned for his actions that happened in season 2 by his mom, with him working with Chef in the Illegal Alliance and all, and generally just kind of becoming more of a heinous person. His fall of grace would be highlighted as he now struggles to live on his own. I know it's a bit harsh, but it's for the plot. Also note Sierra still does the spying she did in canon and is effectively in her full season 3 self, but it's no longer anonymous because, she's known. With the new show Total Drama Dirtbags being introduced and the cast being locked out, the new character shown off is actually Jose, or Alejandro's brother. Alejandro would be super pissed about this, his brother out of all people, and would have also been the person he lost to in the competition show. Chris would taunt the cast, and Sierra would try to encourage them to find a way inside the award show, but it ends up going the same that it did in canon. Even after the fail, Sierra decides to give her rousing speech to try to get everyone to be famous again like she does in canon. It goes the same, if not better, thanks to people like Zoe, Mike, and Cameron helping her out with the speech, getting everyone to feel reinvigorated and hop on DJ's mom's bus to stop Total Drama Dirtbags, pretty much the same as canon. The bus ride would be pretty similar to the original, plus with some small teases of cross-season interactions, but none of it's too important. Minus that, all this is the same, and the cast still ends up at the bottom of the cliff, where the cast would be split and decide who would be in season 3 and who wouldn't be in season 3. Once the bus crashes, Jeff offers to make a search party, with people immediately offering to help. The same canon from the Island cast, plus Mike, Zoe, Cameron, B, Sam, and Dakota from the Revenge cast. But a few people decide to join them last second once Stacey mentions she wants to use the time to talk about her relatives. This makes Courtney, Duncan, Lightning, Anne Maria, and Gwen all leave as well. I mean, there's a bonus for Gwen being her boyfriend being part of the search party already, so why not? After a while, though, Chris comes to pick up the leftover castmates and introduce World Tour as a season to them, plus adding Jose for the fun of it as a nice little additional member of the cast for a twist. This makes these 20 the cast for World Tour. You might notice the size increase and the kind of strange number, but I had to make up for the new cast being present somehow, so yeah. Anyway, though, don't worry about that, it'll fix itself. But with the cast decided, we can get to the actual what if. Episode 1, or Walk Like an Egyptian Part 1, starts with the introduction of the season's cast. And all the people who were here are close to canon, with one small thing being different being of the handsome new guy in town being Jose instead of Alejandro, with Jose being the person to help all the people who trip and fall. Alejandro would be annoyed seeing this, and Don would have a comment talking about Alejandro's inferiority complex that he has deep inside him, with Alejandro denying that fact. The rest of the intros are pretty simple or just not important, so we can skip to the plain explanation. As Chris goes over the rules of the plane, Zeke still has a speech of overconfidence, and Stacy also has a yap fest about one of her extended family members being the inventor of the travel blog, which Zeke buys and finds cool. Chris would order the two to zip it in as he continues, but the thing is, they don't shut the fuck up, so Chris just gets sick of their asses and chucks them both out of the plane. Both of them hang on to the landing gear, no, not the landing gear, the wheels, on the way to Egypt, however. But note that they're technically both eliminated right now. Afterwards, first class is shown off, and Dawn, Heather, and Alejandro all have confessionals where they mention they don't distrust or actively dislike Jose, but for different reasons and in different ways. The singing part is also plays out close to canon with Come Fly With Us playing on, and with a few swaps. Jose and Alejandro spot alongside Scott and Joe being the ones who don't want to sing, with Don encouraging the two, which both begrudgingly do sing for the sake of money. The only other thing that changes is that Zeke's solo is now a duet with Stacy. Once the cast arrives in Egypt, Chris explains the challenge and we begin, with the undergroup, which is shown on screen, being pretty much identical besides Dawn being added to that group. Dawn would end up joining DJ, LaShawn, and Harold on the Scarab path, with everyone else taking the same path to doing canon. So I will only mention the Scarab path slightly changing. The only thing that does change is Dawn trying to warn DJ not to touch the cursed dog, but he does anyway, starting his animal curse like in the real show. Afterwards, though, she joins the other three in running from the hills from the falling scarabs. Everyone else from the underpath goes the exact same. With the majority of the new people going over the overgroup, we can talk about the new changes. Alejandro and Jose will be at first bitterly competing to climb the pyramid against each other, but Jose gives up halfway through to take the time to be a gentleman and help out the ladies down below, which doesn't include Joe, as she's already far ahead climbing the thing with ease. Tyler would sigh about being rejected by Lindsay and being just generally ignored, with Brick seeing this and deciding to offer help to Tyler by using the belay system like Courtney did. Tyler would ask Rick about the whole going villain last season thing he did, and why is Brick helping Tyler out? Is it just to get something back or something? Because he does not want to deal with that. Brick is pretty annoyed by the comment of his past mistakes and mothers to Tyler asking if he just wants to help or not. Tyler would accept it, but afterwards, Brick would have a confession about how, sure, he played not so morally last time, but it doesn't mean that he's a horrible person just because he got blinded by a bit of cash. And this season, he kind of wants to prove that he's not an asshole. Last, though, is Scott joining the two later on as he falls down the pyramid on his first attempt of trying to climb it on his own. With that, everyone's talked about, and we can talk about the teams. To start Team A off, Joe's athletics allows her to get over the pyramid fast enough where she is the first one to arrive, making her celebrate about being first, and Lashana, DJ, Harold, and Dawn showing up shortly after. Joe would make a comment about how she's excited to work with compies like all of them, and Alejandro would join them shortly after, climbing the pyramid, saving time thanks to him, not being distracted by helping the girls. He would taunt Jose as he's at the top with Lindsay and Bridget, with Jose rolling his eyes and making a sarcastic comment, not really caring what Alejandro says. Speaking of Jose, himself, Lindsay, Bridget all make up the start of Team B, with Brick, Scott, and Tyler shortly showing up after as they tumble down in a similar style to how Tyler did in Canada, which ironically makes them go faster. This means the leftovers of Noah, Owen, Izzy, Heather, Sierra, and Cody all make up Team 3. Also, because people got out so fast, the musical number wouldn't even be suggested. Well, maybe an Izzy solo in the pyramid because she took a while, but that doesn't matter too much, although it could be fun. After the teams are formed, Stacey and Ezekiel would try and beg for a slot on a team, but Chris doesn't budge. After all, the teams are even right now and no one quit. But Stacey would suggest to Ezekiel that they can just make their own team, which you can see in the corner, but no, it's unofficial. Afterwards, each team starts to pick a name with their teams. Team A being Team Victory still, Team B now being Team Superior, a name suggested by Jose, which is basically a logo with a python that's dark purple in color. And finally, Team C would have a bit of arguing before Sierra decides on Team Chris is really, 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 really hot, which I will call Team Chris for short, like she did in the original team. Also, this means that there's no Team Amazon in this timeline. Very sad. Also, Stacy and Zeke tried to name themselves Team Awesome or something, but no logo shows up because, again, they're unofficial. With that sword, each team gets their items matching their team placement in canon with the challenge, with similar reactions from everyone about what they got. Zeke and Stacy, though, would be asking what they get, but Chris responds with them getting nothing because they aren't competing. Chris would then cut off the episode right here, doing the outro like usual. Episode 2, or Walk Like an Egyptian Part 2, cuts off right back to where we left off after the recap. So, just after a touch of pre-challenge banter, we get to the real stuff. Chris would explain the part, giving each time team to strategize, with Chris does what Team Amazon does, and Team Superior did what Team Chris did in canon, thanks to Jose. Lastly, Team Victory would complain about the stick, but Don would correct them, pointing out it's a divining rod. Alejandro would second that fact, and Harold would too, soon after looking a bit closer at it. So they figure out that divining rod exists way earlier than they did in canon. DJ also still hurts the bird by accident, which Dawn points out the animal curse that he got from the pyramid, which DJ's worried about, but Dawn reassures that it's an easy fix and they just have to find an Egyptian good luck charm of sorts, so they can figure that out. Because they're in Egypt, they should be able to find some good luck charm. After that, though, the challenge can start with Chris releasing the scarabs and the song beginning. After the song goes the same on the ride to the Nile, Jose and Heather would be having some banter that's not so friendly as they travel. Heather would have her confessional about being suspicious about Jose, like she did with Alejandro and Cannon, but a notable difference between the two would be that Jose would be a lot more willing to antagonize the villains, quote unquote, a bit more than Alejandro was willing to antagonize Heather, especially thanks to his brother being labeled as a villain too, so it could be used as a way to antagonize Alejandro and other villains without him being seen as a bad person, but also separate him from his brother as much as possible, basically making Jose look like the good sibling. And thanks to him being a lot more antagonistic, Heather would feel literally no attraction to him, unlike she did with Alejandro. Brick would lightly defend Heather, saying that Jose doesn't have to be so rude, but Jose would clap back, saying that Heather kind of deserves it for what she did, and kind of like how Brick did a lot of bad things in his previous season. This leads to Brick piping down as Jose spots the Nile and directs his team there. Also, thanks to Victory knowing about their divining rod faster than Cannon, they're able to get to the Nile right about now. Sure, they're on foot, but in Cannon, once they figured out the divining rod, they were able to get to the Nile rather quickly. So, knowing from the straight start allows them to have a straight ahead path to where they need to go. So, once they arrive, they would start weaving, with Dawn taking a small bit of time to look around for an Egyptian good luck charm, which is ironically a golden scarab. She makes it into a necklace and quickly gives it to DJ, saying he won't have to hurt any more animals as long as he has it. DJ would thank Dawn just before Team Superior shows up, and also note that Stacy and Zeke are just lost as living fuck right now, running around in circles like original Team Victory was. Once Team Superior starts weaving their bow, Jose and Brick would have an argument about who should be the leader, with a swift vote happening, and everyone siding with Jose to be leader. Brick would be a bit annoyed, but forced to comply as they continue working on it. They're doing an okay job, but Team Victory is clearly far ahead, thanks to Lashana's amazing weaving skills, allowing her to finish their boat before even Team Chris is able to fully get started. With Team Chris lost, like how Team Amazon was in canon, Izzy would tell the camel where to go, heading them to the Nile. Alongside this, though, Ezekiel and Stacy would see them and decide to follow the team, allowing them to make it to the Nile, just as Team Chris does. Once the two teams arrive, Team Superior is about halfway done with their boat, and Team Victory is already halfway across the Nile, thanks to Loshana being really fast in canon, like I said, and also having pretty strong rowers here. This means that both of them are super far ahead. But it's not over yet, as both teams have tricks up their sleeves. Sierra and Stacy, respectively, are both fourth generation basket weavers, or well, Stacy in this case would say her great 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 grandmother invented modern basket weaving techniques or something. Thanks to that, both teams are able to blitz their boats and pretty much done immediately after they got there. With Izzy being able to direct their camel, because no swaps are needing to happen, thanks to Sierra and Izzy already being on the same team, and with their loved ones. After a touch of struggle, though, Team Superior is also off as well. Also note, thanks to Team Victory being so far ahead, Harold would no longer jump into the boat, busting it partially like he did in Canon, so they'd be even farther ahead than they would be under normal circumstances. Once all the teams are on the water, this gives us the music world prize of the episode, which is close to Canon, just with the new people in it. Also, Team Victory would finish rowing about halfway through the song and get first. And after the end of the song plays out, Team Superior would get second from a come behind moment, and afterwards, Team Chris ends up getting third, with Zeke and Stacy getting last, with the song ending there. Victory would be singing about how they won, and afterwards, Chris would mention that if everyone brought back their items, everyone would be safe tonight. The players celebrate, with Zeke asking about their team since they had nothing, with Chris re-entering for the last time that they are a team and, in fact, eliminated. In fact, how about they test out the eliminated mission for real this time? Chris takes both of them to the drop of shame, handing them parachutes only because he legally has to, kicking them off pretty promptly. But they would still hold onto the plane wings and later enter the cargo hold like Ezekiel did in canon, but Stacy's along for the ride. After that, Jose would have a confessional like Alejandro did at the end of this episode, but it would be much different. Today was good, but not ideal. Firstly, my team got second, and not only second, but second to my little brother. Unacceptable. At least no one besides him knows me well enough to think I'm going to do anything bad. And who's going to believe him? He's a villain. In fact, who's going to believe any of the villains once I pick them off one by one? After all, they are the smartest players, so they should be removed as soon as possible. After that, no one's going to stop me, because they'll be too stupid to do so. After that, the episode would end, with Jose having his rich man laugh that he does in All Stars. Episode 3, or Super Happy Crazy Fun Time Japan, starts with Team Superior and Team Chris in economy class, where the hole in the wall still opens up with Jose saving Lindsay from the falling out the plane, replacing what Alejandro originally did with Lashana. Tyler would be upset as Lindsay's his girl, but Brick tries to motivate Tyler, saying that he can still get Lindsay back as long as they reconnect. Scott would scoff, dismissing the idea, but later having a confessional mentioning how Scott would see through Jose like he did with Alejandro last season. But unlike last time, he's going to try to work with Jose instead of against him. After all, Scott trying to screw over Alejandro last season saw him packing, so he'd rather not make the same mistake twice. But that idea is for more so the future. Meanwhile, in first class, Team Victory are all living it up. Joe during this time would offer herself as a team leader as she has the skills for it, with Lashana telling Joe to relax and saying that they don't need a leader. But Joe would be insisting anyway. Lashana eventually laments and just says, "Alright, go ahead, girl. It's your funeral if we lose." With Joe confidently saying that they won't. After that, you would see Dawn and GJ hanging out and the two just doing some meditating. Dawn would have suggested the idea of the DJ and they were just kind of enjoying each other's company. It's not too important, just showing that the two have a friendship already. After Harold points out the cultural appropriation of Chef's outfit, they get tossed out of the plane and have the musical number, which is There's Still So Much to Do Before We Die, like they have in canon. It's pretty close to the original, but again, with the new people being here. After that, they all fall into the giant rice bowl, where Harold nerds out about being in Japan, with Lashana popping out and shortly after Alejandro trying to flirt with her, but Lashana knows his tricks already, and as she saw last season, and just denies his advances. Jose would taunt Alejandro and does the same thing Alejandro did, but a little bit better, and Lashana would be suddenly dreamy eyed. Harold would be shocked by this, and Alejandro extremely annoyed at Jose basically screwing him over. Chris introduces the giant pinball machine for the first challenge of the episode, where each team has to pick who goes in. Alejandro and Jose would both volunteer for their teams, with Alejandro volunteering first and Jose doing after so he can be his brother. They both get their pandas, which both are easily able to charm it. Lastly, though, Cody would go for his team and have to share a ride with Sierra like he did in canon. This basically becomes a 1v1 between the Buramento siblings, as Cody and Sierra struggle to get any points. But Jose would be able to come up on top by just a hair, like 100 points. Jose would then taunt Al once more, with Alejandro being annoyed by the nickname. So this means that Team Superior is first to get their items, then Victory for second, and lastly Team Chris getting third for the commercial challenge. Getting their stuff, I mean. With the commercial challenge for Team Superior, Jose comes up with a water/surfing idea with Bridget as the star of the show. Bridget's pretty flattered to do so and would be willing to take on the lead role, with Jose putting Tyler, which he would specifically specify Taylor to piss him off, and Lindsay as fellow actors for the show. The rest of them would be on the camera crew with Jose. Tyler would correct Jose, with Jose faking apologizing, saying that, "Oh, it's just what Lindsay calls him," so he kind of just assumed he was Taylor. Anyway, after that, they would grab their stuff and head off, with Jose wishing Alejandro luck, or Al luck, as the two teams cross paths, pissing Alejandro off even more. Now, for Team Victory, Harold kicks off with the idea of the Lone Samurai, but Alejandro comes up with his same tiny Tokyo idea he had in canon. Joe would step in with their mild feud to say that since their team has 6 members, they can just have 2 teams of 3 doing a commercial, and whatever commercial is better, they would just submit for the challenge. Everyone actually likes the idea quite a bit, with Lashana even complimenting it, so they would go with the plan. Don, DJ, and Alejandro in one group, and Lashana, Joe, and Harold in another. But eventually it would become clear that Alejandro idea is just better by 7,000 margins. Lastly is Team Chris, who struggle with the leftovers of the random stuff leftover, like Amazon did in canon. Everyone's lost on what the heck to do, especially with the fish tank prompt being gone thanks to Team Superior using it for water effects, so Heather's original idea is completely out of the table. They effectively just do the same fuck it we ball commercial that Cody and Sierra did in canon, just with everyone on the team doing it this time and actually cooperating. Though Heather complains that this is a stupid idea. With all the teams talked about what they're generally doing, let's go over what they do in particular. On Team Superior, everything would be going decently well, with Jose making sure everyone says their lines in the right way and everything's production-wise is going well. As this happens, Scott would try to butter up Jose, asking why that he picked Brick and Scott to be on the camera team with him. Is it because we're the most competent members here? I mean, it would be true. Jose rolls his eyes before responding. No, it's because I wanted to keep a close eye on you two to make sure no self-sabotage or illegal alliance happens in the season. Scott isn't surprised Jose knew about what happened last season, but Scott asked Jose why he would try to do that strategy again, after all, because, Scott lost because of his self-sabotaging in his elimination episode. Brick would also pipe up saying he's not going to work with Jeff this time, but Jose doesn't care, stating that he's going to not take any chances and state that the two villains are going down the second their team loses. After that, Jose walks off and Scott rolls his eyes, calling Jose a hypocrite, while Brick is upset about being called a villain. After Team Superior stuff, we would see Joe be annoyed at Harold's ego trip on Team Victory, and with seeing how trash Harold's idea is, Joe would elect to have Alejandro's commercial be the main one they're doing, as anything is better than this shit. Harold would argue for a bit, but even Lashana agrees, and the two would leave just as Jose shows up, talking to Harold and convincing him to make the commercial on his own and send it as his team's work when they don't see it so they can appreciate him. Harold likes the idea and would just do that because he's really prideful of his work and, he thinks he's the best in this type of challenge because, Japan's his thing. But after that, you would see Team Chris's commercial being filmed before the challenge ends, with Heather complaining a tiny bit, saying that this idea is stupid, but Noah countering, saying, "Do you have any other better ideas?" With Heather shutting up afterwards. With all teams fully covered, we can see the results. We start with Team Superior's commercial being Waves of Flavor. This has Bridget, Lindsay, and Tyler all riding the waves talking about the food before it all goes to hell, with Tyler accidentally falling off the surfboard, hitting Lindsay in the process while she's in the middle of her lines. Because of this, Bridget's forced to finish the lines awkwardly and eat the fishtail, but because that shit is nasty, she ends up barfing before the ad ends awkwardly. Jose would ask what the heck happened, with Bridget apologizing saying she couldn't just stomach the fishtail, with Tyler saying that the board was slippery. To put it bluntly, their ad score is really low as it was awful. Alejandro would taunt Jose, but he waves it off knowing what's about to come up with their team. After that, Chris would introduce the Lone Samurai for Team Victory, which Joe would be interjecting saying it should be Alejandro's commercial, but Chris goes with the one that he was sent with first. Everyone turns towards Harold, with Harold saying that he knows his idea was good and saying that it'll get them first, just watch. But in fact, it did not get them first. With only one actor and how god awful the original was, and this becoming even worse, Chris would call it the worst thing he's ever seen in his life. Everyone would glare at Harold after this, with him chuckling, saying, like Al's was any better. Chris would then decide, just for funsies, to show off what their team would have been if they went with Alejandro's idea, which is pretty close to the original Team Chris commercial, just with some roles swapped out. Chef would comment how that would have kept them safe, which makes everyone glare at Harold even harder, and Harold stumbles trying to look for any excuse, but can't. Let's just say victory is in last. Lastly, Team Chris's is just an upgraded version of Team Amazon's commercial, which is the one that Chef gave the win in the original, which he would still do as the other two ads were horrid, which means that they get first class pretty easily. As for who loses, he states Team Victory. It was just so hard to watch, while Team Superiors was at least comical with the failures. This means that Team Chris gets first and Team Victory would be sent to elimination. The vote for this episode is pretty cut and dry. Harold just really, really screwed up. DJ doesn't even have the animal curse, so there's no reason for him to go. And even if some people dislike Alejandro, particularly Dawn, he hasn't screwed over any of them directly and did really well in today's challenge, almost gaining them the win. Lashana would still vote for Alejandro anyway, as she just can't vote for Harold, even with the mess up, like how she voted for DJ and Cannon. Jose also does his whole honor speech like how Alejandro did to Harold, but his own way to seal the deal even harder of Harold going home. Harold would take his exit like canon, with no major changes, just a speech being about failing his team and sacrificing himself for the sake of his honor, with Joe making a snarky comment about how he was going home anyway, so it doesn't matter, unlike how in canon, DJ was going to go home if Harold didn't do this. After that, though, he would jump without much of a second thought, ending the episode on a slightly meek note. Episode 4, Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better, starts with Team Chris chilling in first class, with Cody getting a foot rub from Sierra like canon. Izzy makes comment about the girl being loco, but Noah calls that statement ironic coming from Izzy of all people. Afterwards, we would see economy class, with Lashana being sad about Harold's elimination, like canon, but Joe gets Lashana and her entire team to refocus on winning. That's all for the pre-challenge interaction, though, so we can move to the challenge itself. Once they land at the Yukon, Chris would explain how the teens have to cross the not-so-frozen river over to the sleds and would set the kids off. Well, not before Lashana gives her team the idea of the strategy that she came up with in canon, which Joe would love the idea of. In fact, she was thinking the same thing. Lashana would roll her eyes at this comment, clearly seeing that Joe wants to take the credit for it. But besides that, the challenge begins. Everyone starts hopping across the water, and Victory would be able to finish this part very fast thanks to their very athletic members. The only exception here is Dawn, but with her glorified teleportation BS she pulls off 80% of the time, I think she could just do that here. Anyway, the people on the sled here would be Lashana, DJ, Joe for Victory, with Joe being the person who's end up carrying the sled, which she would have no issue with. Team Superior would be partly good and partly bad, with Jose, Brick, Tyler, and Bridget doing good, thanks to Jose helping Bridget, and Scott and Lindsay doing bad. Bridget and Jose would also not have an accidental kiss moment thanks to Jose being better at athletics, so he probably catches Bridget, but more in a dip style, so she would swoon over him more. The team would do fine overall and end though with Brick being the first person for his team and be the polar, which he'd be pretty good at. Lastly, Chris' team sucks. Cody, Owen, and Noah all struggled in canon, and Sierra being distracted by that, the only people who could make it to the end at a reasonable time are Izzy and Heather, with Heather being first and would struggle greatly at polling. On the ride to the finish, LaShawna's strategy goes off without a hitch, with no one holding the team back thanks to everyone being decently capable and having some of the fastest members in the game right now. DJ would also not be crying about his mom's freezer thanks to him not being reminded of the animal curse via Heather because it's not active right now. In fact, since Joe's used to training like this, she handles the challenge pretty much with ease, guaranteeing the team first place. Brick would also be doing decently well, carrying Tyler as they travel along and talk for a little bit along the way. Lastly, Heather would have to deal with Izzy, the nut job, as she wishes to God that she was on any other team besides this because they're all useless. Also, because Jose wants to keep his teammate who's loyal to him around, he doesn't get Bridget stuck to a pole because he has no reason to. So instead, he gets Bridget to work in an alliance with him, which of course she would accept because it's Jose. As more and more people get picked up by their sleds, the musical part of the episode is now slightly different thanks to Bridget no longer getting stuck with this pole, which is now a slightly Christmassy, slightly fast-paced song called Mush Mush Mush, with sleigh bells as the main component. Nothing too important happens here besides at the end of the song Team Victory finishing the challenge. After some comedic moments with other teams, Team Superior would finish in second, as with Owen breaking the ice on the bridge and no Tyler to lift the team up, Team Chris just falls into the icy river with no easy way to get out, so they just freeze. Anyway, this means that Team Victory would win and Team Chris would be sent to elimination. For the vote, Heather quickly tries to pull over Sierra and Cody to convince them to vote one of Noah, Owen, or Izzy, as she pleads that if they don't get rid of one of them now, all of the three of them are going to end up going home super quickly as they're going to have too strong of a bond to break. Sierra, seeing the bond they're already starting to form, and Izzy and Owen already being really close as a couple in season 1, she would agree with Heather's plan and agree to vote for specifically Noah, because he's the least close to the others and more likely to be a vote out. At least that's what Sierra says to Heather. The real reason she wants him gone is because she's jealous of Noah kissing Cody before her. I don't know, she just seems like the type to say that in confessional, and even if it was accidental, I don't think Sierra cares. Heather would be happy with the two agreeing and leave, seeing if she can get Izzy's vote as well. Sierra would also leave, needing to use the bathroom, as Jose would show up once again, giving his condolences to Cody about how Sierra's been treating him, and pointing out how he could just vote for Sierra. I mean, everyone else on his team is likely to vote her too, if not this time, then the next time. Cody would agree, seeing how, Sierra's treating him and not wanting it to get worse, and also was far too cold to listen to what Heather was saying. Plus, he knows he's safe tonight and for the next elimination as well. Jose just reassured Cody's actions tonight. The thing is, they weren't voting for Sierra, as Noah would have convinced Owen and Izzy to vote off Heather instead, not only because she's a jerk, but Sierra's way more useful of a comp person. Anyway, Heather would be shocked, blaming Cody for her elimination and him being stupid, but Sierra would defend him, saying that Heather must have voted the wrong person or something, as Cody would never betray their love, with Cody responding on how they're not in love, but Sierra ignores that fact. Heather would roll her eyes and would be about to jump off as her team turns around, not caring about Heather in the slightest, with Jose appearing behind the tome to taunt Heather as she leaves, claiming it was his doing for why she was going home, even if that's only partly true. She would say, "I knew you were up to something, you..." Heather then gets cut off by Jose letting go of her and causing her to fall, as she yells, "Snake!" doing so. Jose would then have a confessional at this. "Oh, how the mighty have fallen, from third place in your first season to third elimination out on this one. Must have been embarrassing, but that doesn't matter. That's one villain down, 4 more to go." He would have a smile as he ends the confessional. Episode 5 of Broadway Baby starts off with Team Victory in first class once again, enjoying all the perks and Joe saying that they need to keep this up, which should be easy considering her skills. LaShawna then would correct her, saying the team skills, which Joe would scoff at and agree that LaShawna has some pretty major skills too, I guess. After that, we would pan to economy class, where all of the team Chris is still suffering from the cold of last episode, and Sierra is huddling more so coiling Cody for warmth. But on the other team being Team Superior, Jose would pull Bridget, Tyler, and Lindsay to the side, trying to make an official alliance with them to get rid of Brick and Scott, who he labels as the villains of the team. Lindsay would instantly agree, but Tyler and Bridget aren't so sure. Tyler mainly because he and Brick have been bonding for the past few episodes, and Bridget, being the nice girl she is, wanting to give the two the benefit of the doubt. Jose is able to come with to a compromise with Tyler, saying that they can vote out Scott first, but then convince Bridget to do this plan by pointing out how the villains, are bad and how she knows how bad they can be. After all, she was the co-host of the Aftermath. She's seen how heinous their actions have been, and who knows, the two could be scheming together right now. Bridget would know that he's saying the truth and seeing what they've done and agree to the alliance because of it, and also because it's Jose. Speaking of the other two, though, Scott would be trying to talk to Brick, with Brick giving him the cold shoulder, but Scott would then point out how they kind of need each other right now in the game. Otherwise, Jose is going to charm his way into the other's hearts and send both of them packing, as he already doesn't like the two. Brick, seeing Scott's point, would agree to working together with Scott and staying confessional that even if he's working with a person like Scott just for his survival, it doesn't mean that he's a bad person for working with him because, it's just for the game and just for survival. Afterwards, you would see Alejandro get out of first class and be annoyed seeing that Heather is eliminated, which Jose would taunt knowing that Al has a pretty minor crush on her. It's pretty minor banter between the two, but it's clear Alejandro is getting more and more sick of his brother by the day. Moving on to the challenge, particularly the climbing section of it, it's kind of the same order result of the last challenge, with Victory being in first thanks to their athletic members, well, minus Dawn, but she doesn't slow them down too much. Team Superior not being too far behind in second, just with some minor struggles here and there. And in last being Team Chris, with two major roadblocks being Owen getting tangled in the cord and Cody being stuck in the Liberty's chest, meaning that they would be super far behind the other teams. I also don't think Alejandro encourages Sierra to highlight about Chris's past anymore because Heather is no longer working with her as, she's eliminated. Plus, Alejandro getting Sierra out last season means that I doubt that Sierra would even listen to Alejandro now. Moving on to the boat ride section, Joe would be driving for Team Victory, going fast and allowing them to keep their lead, but no one falls off to make sure they don't fall behind. Team Superior would be right after, with Jose driving for his team, and last by a long mile would be Team Chris, and they fall even farther behind once Cody falls off the boat, because they have to go back and drive off to get him. Anyway, I don't think the positions change for this section. In fact, I could even see Dawn working with the alligator to get her team even farther ahead. So for sure, they are first. Afterwards, Superior is second, and then Team Chris is in last. For the carriage section, Dawn, Lindsay, and Noah would be in their team's carriages, as What's Not to Love About New York would still play out pretty close to the original. Lashana ends up wasting time like in the original with her dancing, leading to all the teams arriving at Turtle Pond around the same time. When they have to bump for apples, though, Joe would be going for her team instead of DJ because Joe would actively want to do this type of challenge. Tyler would be going for his team like in the original, and Sierra would be going for her team as well. Tyler and Sierra would do about the same as they do in canon, with Joe doing well and smacking the snapping turtles once they get close to her, but she would still suffer some injuries and waste some time because of it. This makes Team Victory and Team Superior finish around the same time, with Team Chris being just a little bit behind. The final sprint would play out as an Alejandro versus Jose moment, with neither team holding back, but Jose would be able to push the car out just enough where it ends up with his team winning the race, alongside them allowing them to snag first. Team Victory would get second, and then Team Chris gets last, but it doesn't really matter as it's a reward challenge. Team Chris would celebrate not having to go through another non-elimination, as Team Superior ends up getting the reward. Speaking of that reward, three members of the team would each open up one of the three apples. Lindsay would open up the first one with candy inside of it, which she takes excitedly, mentioning how she wanted candy as a reward in episode 3, saving a bit for later. Brick would open up the apple that has a ton of apples in it, remarking how ironic it is. Lastly, Tyler would open up the one with the meat grinder in it and actually keep it, being optimistic about it potentially coming in handy soon. After that, the episode ends here. In episode 6, or the Aftermath 1, Heather Over Troubled Water, we only have two people being interviewed, like in the original, being Harold and Heather this time, as Stacey and Ezekiel are both still on the plane. Blaney and Jeff are still hosting, with Harold's interview remaining mostly the same, singing Baby with the Total Drama Brothers, while Heather's interview would be about her fall from grace and power as a villain. Jeff would take a jab at her, asking if Heather ever wished she played differently, with Heather denying that fact, and proving her point, she would sing a song called I'm Not Sorry, which is basically a twisted rock version of the original I'm Sorry song, where instead of admitting she feels sorry for herself, Heather would double down. As the song goes on, however, you would see that she's lying to herself more and more about not feeling bad about what happened. The song ends solemnly as she imagines a world where she wasn't the bad guy in the end of the day. People would dog on her from the peanut gallery, saying it wouldn't be possible thanks to her personality, with Zoe being the exception, feeling a little bit bad for her. The only other important thing about this aftermath would be Jose being talked about as a villain and what people think of him. After that, the aftermath ends. Episode 7, or Slapdown Revolution, begins in the content class where Team Victory and Team Chris are at. It's not in too important banter, but the Seagull still shows up thanks to the hole in the wall and ends up landing on DJ. He's a lot more calm about it than he was in canon, but that's mainly because he doesn't have the animal curse. Don would also comment about how cute the little guy is. Meanwhile, Jose would sneak out first class, offering snacks to everyone in the economy minus Joe and Alejandro. Joe would be pretty annoyed after seeing this, and even more so when Jose decides to flirt with Lashana, with her soaking right into it. She would say her annoyance in confessional, not because Joe's jealous or anything, but because she wants her team to focus. Though you can kind of tell that the first part is a lie, at least partially. After that, the musical number pre challenge would still happen, which is pretty much the same, but Jose takes over Alejandro's role again in the original. Lindsay would remember Tyler here still, and makes even more sense thanks to them being on the same team and interacting a little bit more, causing Tyler to scream for joy, causing the avalanche like the original. On the climb back up, the two would be chatting, actively being happy, with Brick congratulating Tyler on getting his girl back. After that, we can move on to the real challenge. With the challenge officially starting, Team Superior having the electric meat grinder gives them an early lead that's hard to come back from. Well, besides from Lindsay and Tyler being a bit distracted with each other, that could help a little bit. Team Victory would not be doing half bad, with Dawn refusing to do the challenge though because of her love for animals. And last, for the upteenth time, is Team Chris, thanks to having all the problems from the original episode. Sierra's making meat Cody's, and Owen's eating what's left of the sausage that is made. This makes the order pretty clear for the race. Team Superior is in first, Team Victory in second, and then Team Chris in last. Cody would also be still forced to wear the penalty hosen like canon. As for who competes in the second part of the challenge, Team Superior is basically a full new team. So I went with Jose, Scott, and Brick as I felt like they fit the challenge best here. Team Victory only gets two members like in canon, with being Lashana and Joe. Joe would complain about the numbers disadvantage, but Chris doesn't care. Lastly would be Team Chris, which has Sierra, Cody, and Owen doing the challenge. With that said, we can actually move on to what happens during the challenge. Well, after Sierra's weird song. In the pre-dancing part of the challenge, basically Jose keeps working on Lashana, trying to keep bringing her up like how Alejandro was in canon. Joe would try to warn her about working with the enemy and a guy like Jose, with Lasana assuming that Joe is jealous, which Joe would deny. Lashana then would have a confessional about Joe getting on her last nerve as a late, and that if they go up for elimination, she might just vote her off. Brick would then also happen to see this and question what Jose is doing, with Jose basically saying he's just trying to do what's best for the team, which Brick also questions in confessional. Moving to our actual matchups, which are shown on screen, we have our first round play out with Jose, Lashana, Sierra, and Brick moving on. I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory, minus Joe versus Sierra, which could be a pretty close face-off, but I think Sierra's type of skills would be better at this challenge, meaning Joe gets eliminated and would be pretty annoyed at it. Moving on to the what should be the semifinals, but ends up being the final round, it plays out with Jose and Sierra facing off with Lashana and Brick doing the same. The fights would start with Jose encouraging Lashana to seize the day and take out that villain for the sake of everyone who lost because of him last season, shouting, "Make him pay!" Brick would shout Jose for saying this, saying, they're on the same team, then slapping Lashana like Heather did, and Lashana gets super pissed, so smacks him down, going as far as jumping down with him thanks to Jose egging on the situation to beat him up further, taking out a tooth like she did to Heather and Cannon, but this time it's Brick. Jose would then comment about how, she took out Valen out with ease, with Sierra taking the chance of Jose being distracted to knock him down, meaning Chris wins while Victory is up for elimination. Joe would be pissed at Lashana for throwing the challenge, but Lashana would say that Joe should be thankful as Brick did eliminate her last time. Alejandro would also be extremely annoyed at Lashana, seeing exactly what Jose's doing, and confronts him, but Jose would brush it off. Brick is also gaining a lot of suspicion, which he would say in confessional about Jose because of what he said. For the vote, Lashana and Joe argue about what happened in the challenge, with Joe being particularly aggressive about Lashana needing to stop getting distracted by Jose. Lashana doesn't care though, as she was the last person in the challenge today, so why does it matter? She performed good today. Joe would sigh and walk away, and seeing that Lashana's not listening to reason, gather everyone up to vote off Lashana. Sure, she likes Lashana as a friend and all, but she won't listen to reason here. Lashana would be doing the same thing for Joe, but not because of strategy or any decent reason, just because she's upset at Joe right now and been getting sick of her for the past few episodes. Alejandro, though, would point out that the reason why Lashana wants to get Joe out is extremely petty, and Lashana lost a challenge today. But Lashana tries to point out how Joe's kind of a person who should go home. Alejandro, though, has already made up his mind and would leave, with Don and DJ being acting as the swing votes. And I think both would kind of see that Lashana's being kind of unreasonable today and kind of sold the challenge for unnecessary reasons, and both decide to vote her off. So it'd be a 4-1 vote with Lashana going home. Lashana's elimination is pretty close to Cam, with her being shocked about it and talking about how she seized the day before being promptly kicked out the plane. Well, minus removing the Alejandro section. Though Jose would have a confessional at the end talking about how he wanted to keep Lashana in to basically get rid of Joe and Alejandro for him, but looks like he's going to have to find a different, if not more direct way in order to get the two out. But he can adapt. Episode 8, or the Amazon race, opens up with economy class and Owen giving Cody a black eye by accident, which Owen would apologize for. Moving to team victory, everyone's talking about the Lashana elimination, but Joe gets her team to refocus once again. Meanwhile, in first class, Brick is looking at his injuries Lashana gave him last time, and Scott and Tyler were saying that it was one way to take something for the team. Scott more sarcastically and Tyler more genuinely. Also, no one comments about being in the Amazon because, there's no Team Amazon in this timeline. Though maybe someone would comment that, maybe Lindsay would comment that Team Superior hasn't lost a single challenge yet. Maybe they can win the entire show, which people would comment on. Once they land in the Amazon, Chris explains the challenge with no one being given the EpiPen for Cody, making Sierra even more annoyed at him. But after that, the challenge would begin, with the teams heading off. Everyone would be walking till the major split shows up with Team Victory and Team Chris heading the left path while Team Superior takes the right path. As Scott says, right is right, like he did in the Mind Challenge of Season 4, the original one at least. No one would argue with the logic, and Jose would even highlight that if he's wrong, they know exactly who to vote out tonight, which makes Scott a bit worried. Showing the left path first, I think Team Victory arrives first as they have faster members generally, allowing them to take the T-bar and everyone would be grabbing on DJ's back like Lindsay did in the original. Meanwhile, Sierra would grab her belt and drag Cody to the end for Team Chris, while the other three members of Team Chris just do what the original Team Chris did in canon. These two teams effectively take place of their canon team members, being Victory and Chris respectively, so I won't go over them too much this episode. On the other hand, on the right path, Team Superior comes across the Zing Zings like the Amazon did, where they are spotted, and when they figure out the walkie-talkies have no batteries, it leads to them getting captured. Brick would bring up his portable nightlight that he brings everywhere, having batteries that they could use, but Scott would make fun of him for having it, but does agree to grab it, going through a ton of random military stuff before finding it and calling Chris, where he starts a musical number, making Brick have a solo. It's just the same song with new people, but when Brain sings, the Zing Zings reveal that he's a god to them, like Heather was in the original. As it's clear Chris set that up, whoever had the missing tooth. So basically, Brick is taking Heather's place in this part of the episode. Anyway, at night, Victory would be chilling with Dawn talking about the animals around all of them, alongside the Banana Award being pretty nice. And Team Chris would have the same fate that Team Chris had in the original. But moving on to the actual important team for the episode, Team Superior has Brick gain the gold tooth, which he allows to convince the Zing Zings to let everyone go as the god of the tribe. He would take the role pretty much in stride, slightly leaning into his more egotistical side that was shown during season 2. Just a minor factor, but something is fun. This also allows Team Superior to catch up a good bit with getting some items from the fake Zing Zings, as the actors are forced to play along with Brick needing a sacrifice of items. Now for the final part of the challenge, Team Victory would still be in first and start looking for the treasure, Joe getting her team to split up to cover more ground. Afterwards, Team Chris would finally come, but get blocked by searching for someone who's gone, being Owen. Cody would ask Sierra to do it to get some breathing time from her, as she zooms off, willing to do anything for Cody. Cody would then talk to the other two, practically begging them to vote off Sierra the next time they go home, which Noah would agree to because Sierra has been pissing his ass off a lot. Lastly, Sierra finally finds Owen and rescues him, as Team Superior, who comes up pretty close. So Sierra would carry Owen not to waste time and lose. But as you would see that Sierra and Owen alongside of Team Superior would be racing to get to Machu Picchu. Chris and Superior would arrive at the same time, with Team Superior being slightly faster, but Tyler finding the secondary treasure like he did in canon, getting Lindsay to pull it out for him. It's revealed that it wasn't the real one, and Joe already found the treasure. So Team Victory wins, and Team Superior gets second, with Chris revealing that in a buzzer beater footage, Superior got the round first anyway, meaning that they are second, and Team Chris has to vote someone off. Although this is a non-elimination round and will stay a non-elimination, I have to go over the votes since they are publicly revealed. But thanks to them being locked on Sierra, thanks to Cody talking to Noah, and just Noah's general annoyance, we just need to talk about the confessionals, really. Noah opens the vote, voting Sierra, calling her nuts, which he gets angry about, and Owen would say the same thing that Noah did, voting for Sierra as well. Sierra then votes for Noah, commenting how she never expected to say that name of all people. Then Izzy would vote for Sierra too, saying that there can only be one crazy girl out on this plane, and that's her. Sierra would be upset knowing she's going home, although happy Cody's staying, but for some extra salt in the wound, Sierra hears Cody vote him too, and straight up admit that he was the one who got Noah's alliance to vote off Sierra instead, mentioning that he thinks she's insane. She would have a lot of emotions here: anger, sadness, more anger, but Chris would then reveal it's a non elimination, which Sierra's relieved to hear, but still upset about Cody voting for her. She ends with a confessional saying that she's going to make her whole team pay, well, minus Cody for voting her out. Anyway, that means that this will be the last non elimination for a while, as I have to catch up with numbers, so say goodbye to these, and the episode ends. Episode 9, or Can't Help Falling in Louvre, opens up with Team Victory relaxing in first class with Dawn and DJ continuing their meditating that they've been doing for the past few episodes. Dawn would read DJ's aura here and talk about the guilt that he must feel about making him and his mom homeless, but reassures DJ that things will happen and he'll get back on his feet soon. Then Dawn would have a confessional talking about how she misses her friend from season 2, but DJ's been a really great person to hang out with. In economy class, it basically plays out the same with Izzy being Izzy and Sierra being depressed about Cody voting her alongside her whole team. Team Superior doesn't really have too much going on, besides the usual whole banter between Jose and Scott kind of firing back and forth at each other, but outside of that, not much is happening. After the watery landing, each of the teams get assigned statues, with Team Superior getting the statue that the Team Amazon got in the original. After which, Chris would fully explain the challenge, releasing the dangerous animals and setting everyone off to find their statues. The contest would be going pretty easy for Team Victory, as with Dawn's connection to animals once again coming in clutch, they're able to deal with whatever animal they have and are able to look for pieces pretty efficiently. Noah, on the other hand, does a fake ball trick with the Sasquatch, basically meaning that Team Superior is the only team that actually has to deal with an animal in this episode. Although Team Chris has a different issue, dealing with a depressed Sierra. If I'm being honest, that's probably worse to deal with than the Sasquatch, but Noah wouldn't really care about what Sierra is saying and just tasks his team to keep looking for the pieces, but it's clear Sierra is slowing them down majorly with all of her crying and moping. Moving to Team Victory again, Alejandro would offer for the team to have a split up and save time, with Don and DJ going with one group and Alejandro and Joe going in another. DJ and Don would agree to the idea and run off, with Alejandro revealing the real reason why he wanted to take Joe off to the side, which is Alejandro has seen that DJ and Don have been really close of as late and wants to work with Joe in order to make sure that they don't get picked off on their team. Joe would see the point and agree to deal with Alejandro that they work together to get rid of DJ, as Joe genuinely thinks Dawn is better at challenges, as seen with her animal skills in this episode, and generally her intelligence balance out Joe and Alejandro's more brawn abilities. The two would shake on the deal, but both have their fingers crossed, showing that they might have other plans if the time arises. We pan back to Team Chris once again, where we see Noah get annoyed enough with Sierra that he tasks Cody to fix what the heck is going on, as she's slowing them down majorly. Cody tries to do what the other he does in canon, while the other three try to go through the lasers, like Team Chris had to do in the original. And Izzy gets tasked to go through it, though, because Noah's a leader in this timeline, and he wouldn't want himself to go through it, which makes Izzy do it with ease. During the song, though, which is mostly the same, Izzy's just getting the piece midway through it. Sierra would mention that she wants to go outside, with Noah making Cody do that. So they're on that side quest for the rest of the episode, like the original. Around this time, both Team Superior and Team Victory would finish grabbing the pieces for the puzzle. I know I haven't mentioned Team Superior much in this challenge, but that's just because they're doing background stuff and not doing too many things that are important. And ends with Team Victories and Superior pieces getting mixed together, like in the original with Team Chris and Team Amazon. But Chris is slower in this timeline, so they don't get their pieces mixed up. Afterwards, Team Chris would show up with Noah stating that Sierra and, Cody are outside, showing the date scene, which is identical to canon, though shown earlier because there's no animal curse shenanigans to be shown alongside this episode. Now that all the teams have all their pieces, the teams would start assembling, and thanks to Team Chris not having their statue messed up, they end up getting first. So after that, when Team Superior and Team Victory realizes that they have their pieces mixed up, they get them back from the opposing team and race to build their statues, competing for not last. It's kind of hard to figure out considering the teams are kind of even, but with Lindsay being able to assemble a whole statue by herself in canon, almost winning if it weren't for DJ crashing into it, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that she could carry her team fast enough to make sure they win instead. So Team Victory would lose once more. The vote's pretty easy to figure out here. It would be a tie with Alejandro and Joe voting DJ like they planned, and Dawn and DJ voting Alejandro, with Dawn telling DJ to probably prep for a tiebreaker as she feels it coming. Sure, Joe and Alejandro could betray each other, but they don't really gain anything from it, so they would just vote DJ. Lucky for me, there was already a tiebreaker here, so the walk-off can still commence. Each would start by picking a model, Alejandro picking Lindsay and DJ picking Bridget, with the judges being Chris, Brick, and Owen for the challenge. The challenge would begin, and it would be pretty standard with both guys locking in trying to make a nice outfit, with Jose having a small trick up his sleeve, sabotaging his younger brother's work just before the runway begins by removing a thread from the dress. So once the runway starts, Lindsay's outfit unravels and makes her leave in embarrassment, running off from the stage. With Alejandro shocked about what happened, but knowing exactly who did it once he sees Jose smile off to the side, cursing his older brother privately, well, actually, probably publicly. DJ's outfit is fine, on the other hand, pretty nicely made, with his outfit being inspired by his mom. The judges come to a pretty clear consensus. Alejandro is going home, though Brick would note the clear fashional sabotage that's going on. Alejandro's pretty upset about taking his exit, with Jose taunting his little brother about losing. Alejandro would then choose out Jose, saying that he knows Jose is the reason why he's going home tonight. Jose then would lightly admit it, thanks to no one being around to see Alejandro go home, with Jose wishing Al a safe landing as Jose pushes Alejandro off the plane, with him chuckling after that, saying, "Now that's two down, three to go." Episode 10, or New Kids on the Rock, starts with Jill on the outsider team. Trying to think of any way of getting out of this situation, she's extremely annoyed but comes up with an idea to try to find another ankle to work with, or particularly another team to work with. So she sneaks into first class and tries to strike up an alliance with Team Chris to take down Team Superior, as they haven't lost a member yet, or a challenge. Noah, generally being pretty logical, would agree with saying it's for the best. So the teams are somewhat aligned. They basically agree to not target each other and, whenever possible, target Team Superior over each other. Panning back to economy class, Jose would decide with Alejandro gone and Joe surely to go home next time Team Victory loses, he would decide to throw today's challenge in order to eliminate Scott by making it look like Scott threw the challenge himself. I mean, the team is so far ahead at this point that losing one challenge wouldn't hurt, and Scott figured out Alejandro really fast last season, so it's pretty reasonable for Jose to assume that he'll be found out by Scott pretty soon if Scott hasn't figured him out already. The thing is, though, Scott would have overheard the confessional as he was spying on him, with Scott having won immediately afterwards, saying, "So, he's trying to beat me at my own game. Well, let's just say he's going to have to earn beating me." After everyone gets pushed off the plane and falling into the water, DJ would almost drown, but Dawn is able to get an orca to help him, which DJ would be thankful for. After which, Chris would explain the challenge, giving Team Victory a motor thanks to their number disadvantage, which Joe would be pretty excited about because they need to make sure that they need to win because, Joe would be screwed if they lose. Anyway, he would also explain a rule change thanks to this challenge being elimination now. The first team to shore would win first class, but the second and third must compete in the three-part relay race that was originally for first place in the end to decide which team loses as a whole. But once a full team makes it, they are allowed to start the gauntlet. With everything explained, every team would swim to their boat and the challenge would officially begin. As all the teams start rowing, Joe would briefly struggle with the motor before being able to dash ahead of the two rowing boats. The two rowing teams, however, would be pretty close together, with Team Chris slightly ahead as Jose is weakly rowing as Scott takes a jab at him for not trying in the challenge, but Jose would ignore it. The song would now start here, being pretty simple, with the "It's a Sea Shanty with that song catchy" being pretty much the same, but Scott would take several jabs at Jose throughout the song, pointing out his lazy work during the challenge, which Jose would be pretty annoyed at. And Jose, seeing that Scott is trying to figure him out and trying to expose him, he needs to get rid of Scott fast at this point. After the song ends, Team Victory comes across the icebergs and shortly after passing them ends up on the shore, where they are announced to win the first part and gain first class. The three are pretty happy with this, and shortly after, Team Chris would arrive to start their part of the Newfoundland relay race. But the thing is, Team Superior is nowhere in sight. Gee, I wonder where they are. That's because they're in the middle of the water thanks to Jose's major slowdown. They are super far behind at this point, with Scott continuing to antagonize Jose for going slow, which annoys Jose enough to make a hole in the boat to blame Scott on. But Scott would call him out for doing it just before Jose could blame him. This puts Jose on the back foot as he defends himself, with Bridget backing him up, as does Lindsay. Brick in the moment would also be able to connect the dots about the whole fashion sabotage and realize Jose likely did it, so he would take Scott's side in the argument here. The argument would happen as Tyler tries to break up the argument, playing the middleman. But with more people on Jose's side, Scott would see he's not making progress and decide that he has to try to win the challenge instead, or at least prove he's not throwing. So he would say, "Alright then, would a guy who's trying to throw the challenge do this?" He then would dive into the water and push the sinking boat to shore, with Brick and Tyler seeing the idea and following suit. Jose would scoff, saying that he's compensating, which the girls would nod to, agreeing with him. Anyway, while that chaos is happening, Team Chris would have been able to finish the first and second parts of the relay race challenge, with Owen and Izzy still drinking the cider, with Sierra getting the message right pretty quickly, as with how much of a weird superfan she is, I can see her studying Chris's home language to be able to talk to relatives more for more info about the show, allowing her to get the question right pretty quickly. The last part, though, is kissing the fish, which Cody has to do, and he would struggle to do it, especially with Sierra fighting it every step of the way. Though, with how much time they have over Team Superior, with how much time they wasted, Cody's eventually able to suck it up, and after Noah makes him think the fish is Gwen, Sierra would be super fish, jumping at the fish, tackling it, and biting its head off, threatening Cody, saying that's what will happen if he kisses any girls besides her, because that's Sierra. Anyway, this means that Team Chris would take second, just as Team Superior arrives to the cabin, and Chris would announce them losing, with Jose and Scott glaring at each other. For the vote, Scott would get Brick and get the two to try to convince Tyler and Lindsay to vote for Jose after what happened in the challenge with the sabotage. But Lindsay would still believe it was Scott, thanks to Jose using Scott's brief history of sabotaging his own team last season against him. So she would leave, assuming that Scott did it and likely voting for him. Afterwards, Brick would try to convince Tyler more thoroughly, asking why would Scott sabotage his own team when he's on the bottom of it, and then try to help his team win 10 seconds later with his idea. It didn't make any sense for him to do it. Tyler would actually see that as a pretty good point, so would say he will think on it before leaving, with Brick and Scott hoping that it works. Scott would smile at Brick, telling him that he did pretty good with his work there, but Scott's going to leave to try to prepare for a tiebreaker, or at least try to flip Bridget, but it's not likely considering how much work Jose has done on her. Brick, though, would say that he can try to flip Bridget, not wanting to give up on the vote. But it turns out there won't be a tiebreaker. Thanks to Jose working his mind magic on Tyler, he's able to butter a guy up enough to think Jose is innocent and think Scott did the sabotage instead of Jose. On top of that, Brick's plea to Bridget falls on deaf ears and doesn't work, as Bridget's so far in Jose's web, she thinks that he can do nothing wrong at this point. Scott would be pretty annoyed after hearing the votes and being bested for the second time, and before leaving would decide to warn his team about the grease pig known as Jose on their team. He effectively is calling him the country version of what Noah called Alejandro a few episodes later. As Scott leaves and jumps, Rick would look at his team awkwardly, knowing he's on the outs. As Jose would snicker in confessional, saying that although that's not how he expected to eliminate Scott, it still worked out for him in the end. That is 3 down, 2 more to go. Episode 11 of Jamaica Me Sweat starts with the night before, with Brick confronting Jose about sabotaging the team last episode. And he also brings up the fashion typer with Alejandro and Jose messing with Lashana. Jose would realize that Brick clearly knows what's going on and decides not he doesn't really need to hide anything in front of Brick anymore, as what's he going to do? Tell someone? They'll likely never believe him. Anyway, he shows his full colors in front of Brick, admitting that, yeah, he was the one who caused Alejandro and Lashana to go home, even if his plan with Lashana was slightly different. He'd also kind of talk about how he eliminated Heather, too. Brick would be pretty shocked at this and about to shout at him, but Jose would cover his mouth and grab his arm, threatening Brick that if he says even a peep about knowing what Jose is doing right now and not doing exactly what he says from now on, Jose will throw Brick off this plane faster than anyone else ever has, and he will get caught in one of the jet engines. Brick, although he's gained more confidence in this timeline, when faced with something like this, he would immediately pipe down and nod agreeing, out of fear. Jose would laugh and let go of him, saying, "Good. Now, first thing, help me finish cleaning up after what Scott did with my reputation. I don't want to be known as a saboteur. Say he threatened you or something, I don't really care." Jose would then walk off as Brick sighs. God, this reminds him so much when he got extorted by Joe last season. Anyway, moving on from that, in economy class, Noah and Owen would actually be talking about Izzy, with Owen's plan to break up with her. Noah would agree with this notion, and Cody seconds it, bringing up Sierra as a good reason why you don't want to live with that type of crazy for the rest of your life. Meanwhile, Team Superior wouldn't be doing too much, just Brick backing up Jose defending himself after Jose threatened him. Tyler would find it a bit odd considering what happened yesterday, but Brick would just say, oh, he realized he was wrong, as an excuse. After a brief moment seeing Victory in first class, the plane starts to go down, with Indy opening up the hole in the economy class wall again to jump down, with Owen falling out shortly after, allowing both to get smushed by the plane. This leads to both of them being injured like cannon, and Izzy eventually being medevaced by the military, but that doesn't happen just yet. Moving to the challenge for Team Victory, Joe would task Dawn to take the dive and ask the Sharks and Eels to where the treasure is, so afterwards she can tag Joe and she can retrieve the treasure herself. Although Dawn knows Joe's doing this to feed her own ego, Dawn also thinks this is actually a decent idea, so would agree to do it. For Team Superior, Tyler would just be taking all the dives like he tried to do in canon. And lastly, Cody and Sierra would be jumping for Team Chris, with Noah hanging back to talk to Joe during the first dives about Team Chris and Team Victories teaming up against Team Superior like they wanted to a few episodes ago. And with Noah having two of his teammates presumed out of the game, their team's going to need all the help they can get. Joe would agree with that statement and say that maybe they can even get Chris to agree to merge Team Chris and Team Victory if both of them are actually eliminated. Noah would like the idea, but Jose would see this in the background and get really annoyed about the team up, planning to do something about it later. Anyway, the result of the challenge would be Joe grabbing the chain at first, with Jose diving in the water to save her from the eels while Morso grabbed the chain. But Dawn would take back what's rightfully theirs, not in a cocky way, just they got the chain first, so she would think that they should win and take it off. Plus, if Jose tried to stop her, she would just get jumped by the sharks because protecting Dawn and all that stuff. This means that Team Victory would win the advantage of the helmets, but Joe has to be sent to the infirmary. Speaking of said infirmary, we pan over there, and it basically plays out the same as canon, with just Joe taking Gwen's role, basically. And this is the point where Izzy's taken by the military, causing her to be eliminated. The moment between Izzy and Owen would basically play out the same here, with Izzy saying their incompatibleness and the song afterwards also playing out pretty much identical, with Joe just singing Gwen's lines. In fact, Joe making comments about Izzy dumping Owen fits her even more than Gwen, honestly, because of her cynical side. Moving on to the first part of the bobsledding challenge where none of the people in the infirmary could compete, Dawn and DJ are forced to go for Team Victory, with Jose and Bridget going for Team Superior, and lastly, Sierra and Cody going for Chris. Firstly, DJ and Dawn do well like DJ did in canon, high-fiving each other at their good teamwork. Afterwards would be Jose and Bridget, who do amazing thanks to both of their athleticism, which Jose would comment on in a flirty way, making Bridget swoon even harder than she has in the past few episodes. Lastly, Sierra and Cody would do the same they do in canon. Not bad, just not as better as the other two teams. Team Superior would be in first, Team Victory would be in second, and Team Chris would be in last, but not too far behind the other two teams. Owen would also come back at the end of round one like he did in canon, but Joe will have to wait the rest of the challenge out like Gwen did. Next up is Dawn and DJ again for Team Victory, Lindsay and Tyler for Team Superior, and Noah and Owen for Team Chris. Dawn and DJ would both be doing pretty well, shaving off a few seconds from their time, allowing them to take first. The two would celebrate, with Jose smiling, coming up with a plan to take them down, seeing how close they are. Next up are Lindsay and Tyler, who are put bluntly a disaster. Lindsay is scared as crap, with Tyler scared too, and both are a clumsy mess, leading to them being super slow on the track together, putting the team in dead last the overall time-wise. Noah and Owen would also be slow, but not as much of a train wreck as Lindsay and Tyler. This means that Victory is now in first, Team Chris is in second, and Team Superior is in third. Before the final round, Jose starts to whisper to Brick to sabotage the course in order to make sure Team Victory loses the challenge. Sure, he could just let his team likely lose and send Brick home, but Jose just started having his fun with Brick and wants to play with his food a little bit more before tossing Brick away. Plus, this way, Jose can easily get rid of Joe as well, instead of sabotaging Team Victory himself later on and risking getting caught. So he tasks Brick to mess with the court, which Brick reluctantly does, adjusting a panel just as DJ and Dawn start to descend, causing them to fly off into the sunset like DJ did in canon, leading to them getting a DNF. Jose then decides to be an asshole and calls out Brick doing the sabotage, causing DJ to get really annoyed at Brick as he tries to and fails to defend himself. Jose would make a snide comment about how it's such a shame that the team had to win with Brick's dastardly tricks. Dawn would be mad at Brick, though, as she knows that he was forced to do it, as she can tell by his aura. Alongside the fact that Dawn can see Jose's aura is just like Alejandro's, but even more pitch black. I mean, she knew this for a while, but it would have never been explicitly mentioned till now. Eventually, though, Joe would come back around and ask if the team won, where DJ reveals his sabotage, and Joe would get extremely pissed at Brick, as she's now going home because of him. Brick would try to apologize, but Joe would just punch him, make him shut the fuck up. Anyway, in the end, Team Chris wins the challenge, with Team Victory losing. The vote would be pretty quick. DJ and John just vote for Joe, not because they dislike her or think she's a bad leader or anything. They just like each other more as people. And even though I see Joe trying to convince Dawn to vote for DJ, it definitely doesn't work here. Joe's goodbye would be pretty brief, with her asking Dawn and DJ to take down Brick for her, which DJ would agree to do so, with Dawn being not so sure. Joe would then jump off and fake her scream, before getting attacked by the fire ants like DJ was in canon. Also, for anyone who's saying it's unfair that Joe got eliminated because she didn't get to compete in the challenge, it wouldn't have mattered if she competed or not, so I decided to go with what was more likely to be canon. The results would have been the same either way. Anyway, that means Joe takes 12th place. Episode 12 for the Aftermath 2, The Revenge of the Telephone, has Jeff and Blanley still as hosts thanks to Bridget still being in the game. Speaking of Bridget, Jeff would be horrified to see her in danger. Even if she's been half flirting with Jose the whole season, it's not like she's done anything with him yet. That's called foreshadowing. Anyway, the telephone would play out pretty close to canon, but with the new sections for the new people eliminated. Also, total drama fugitives would be Ezekiel and Stacey instead of Ezekiel and Duncan here. The main thing that changes though is sisters get swapped out with a number called Ole Screw You Jose, a fun Latin-inspired song that's basically the four people who got screwed over by Jose in this part of the season, plus Heather because she likes talking shit, insulting Jose with a Latin beak in the background, all each having their solos. Also, yes, Joe would have figured out the truth about her elimination, though she would think Brick is still partly responsible, even with knowing the full story because he still did the action. He could have just not. The rest of the episode would go pretty close to canon, with the gang raising enough cast to save the show. They also don't have to raise as much thanks to no animals destroying the animal studio, thanks to DJ not being present, and no animal curse existing. Episode 13, or I See London, starts with everyone being in economy class with no one complaining about how they won last time, but Owen would say it's fine, and at least he has the super spicy peppers he got from Jamaica with him. He does the same no shot thing he does in Canada with Jose being disgusted and leaving like Alejandro did, getting captured by two mysterious figures like Alejandro did in the original. But that's all before the challenge happens, meaning Jose's out before even the challenge begins. Speaking of said challenge, once people see Jose is gone, Bridget will be extremely worried while Brick feels like he can finally breathe again. Chris would explain the challenge with the race around London trying to find Jack the Ripper, with DJ being horrified of another horror theme challenge, but Dawn would comfort him saying that they should be fine. After that, they would arrive to the guards and the challenge would officially begin alongside the episode's musical number. Force someone to strip them down plays out pretty similar to canon, with the people doing the stripping being Brick, Sierra, and Dawn. Dawn is able to find the clue fast thanks to being able to read the Stoics guy's aura and tell where the clue is, allowing Victory to gain an early lead in the challenge. While Brick is stripping the guy down, he would take advantage of Jose not being present to try to tell his team about Jose's blackmail, explaining everything and begging them to believe him, or at least not tell Jose he said anything. And although Bridget and Lindsay are both pretty doubtful about this, Tyler's more mixed, thanks to the two's friendship, and is able to at least convince the girls not to tell Jose, as if it's not true, then it shouldn't matter. The two girls would agree with that fact and at least agree to keep the secret, which makes Brick a little bit relieved. He would eventually find the clue and they would be off, with Team Kristen far last, being stalled to Owen wearing the top hat like he was in Canada. Well, not the top hat, the hat. So they are in dead last. Moving on to the stretcher section, DJ and Dom would argue who gets stretched, not in the way I don't want to feel the way, it's more they don't want to hurt each other, but eventually Dom would let Met and allow DJ to get stretched, which takes a while, but they are able to get the clue and are still ahead. Superior would arrive next with Tyler volunteering to get stretched, which goes the same, but this time he isn't forgotten thanks to both Brick and Lindsay caring about him enough to realize Tyler's missing. So they would leave with all four of their members still intact. Lastly, Noah and Owen would show up, wondering where the other two went, which lets us pan to have the same scene with Sierra and Cody, leading to both of them getting captured. So with no other options, Noah decides to stretch himself for Noah's sake, which allows him to get the clue, and even if it takes a while because of Noah's weak arms, they're able to move on. As the teams travel and make it their way to the banquet hall, Team Victory would be able to continue their lead thanks to Dawn making the dogs docile so they're able to get the clue and head to the double-decker bus. The next team would be Team Superior, with Bridger offering to stand outside on guard for her team. So the Team Superior trio would now enter the dining hall as Bridget gets captured by Jack the Ripper, or Jack the Rippers in this case. They're able to find the clue pretty easily and deal with the corgis thanks to Brick's smelly boot, but would walk out to see Bridget gone. After a bit of a reaction, they read the clue and Lindsay's able to instantly figure it out thanks to her ability to solve mysteries like in the mystery episode. So they would head to the bus as well. Lastly, Noah and Owen just go the same as canon, heading to the bus like the original. In the final section, Team Victory would be making their way to the bus, both excited to get another win, but Ezekiel and Sadie attacked from behind and swiftly captured them both, making Team Victory lose the challenge. But it's not over yet, as if Stacy and Zeke don't get captured, they're back in the game. But that wouldn't happen. With Team Superior coming in to the scene, Tyler would use his freakishly strong fingers to manhandle Stacy, capturing her. The team would celebrate walking off with Jack the Ripper, assuming that they caught them. And Ezekiel's encounter with Noah and Owen would effectively go the same, making them be able to capture Ezekiel. As the teams arrive back on the plane, Team Superior will reveal that they found Jack the Ripper, with Owen being confused on how did they find Jack the Ripper as they found Jack the Ripper. Both of them are shown off, with Chris revealing that the two Jacks are actually both feral Ezekiel and feral Stacy, or partially feral versions of them. Chris then would mention that he would have let them return if they weren't caught, but alas, things didn't pan out for them. So both are kicked off the plane once again, but would come back in the cargo hold like in the original with Ezekiel doing it. Afterwards, Chris would mention that all the eliminated people were still watching the whole entire time, which leaves Brick a bit stunned as he chuckles nervously, seeing Jose react to him spilling. But he's safe from elimination tonight, and Team Victory will be going to a tiebreaker thanks to only two of them being left in the game. The tiebreaker for the episode would be a fake murder mystery puzzle that both must solve, and whoever does it first wins. The two teammates would wish each other good luck with a small montage of the two trying to figure out the puzzle, but Dawn would be the person who solves it first, generally because I think she's smarter, and would keep her spot in the game. DJ sighs out his quick elimination, but would wish Dawn good luck, saying that she is carrying the solo team victory now with her. Dawn knows that and hugs DJ before DJ takes a drop of shame. Hey, even if he only barely got farther than the original, he at least didn't have to deal with the animal curse in this timeline, so that's pretty good for him. The thing is, the episode isn't over just yet. Bridget would be in the confessional talking about DJ's elimination and being sad about it when Jose walks in. The two end up talking for a bit with Bridget blushing and Jose thanking her for always being on his side, before pulling Bridget in for a kiss, which Tyler ends up seeing. I know this sounds weird, as didn't you say Jose wouldn't kiss Bridget earlier, so what's different now? Well, to put it simply, it's not only context, but also he has no one left to flirt with besides Bridget. Dom wants nothing to do with him, Sierra wants Cody, and Lindsay is already with Tyler. Plus, Bridget has been on his side the entire time and is never one ally. So, why not keep her loyal permanently with a kiss? That would be the reason why Jose kisses Bridget here. Also, because he didn't want to sabotage Bridget. He wants to work with her. He just wants to keep her around and loyal. Anyway, after the kiss, the episode ends. Sorry for the random explanation. I just felt like I needed to justify what I did. Episode 14, or Grease's Pieces, opens up in first class with a whole lot going on. Tyler is extremely panicky about Jose, asking him to keep the secret about Bridget and Jose's kiss, with Tyler being scared about revealing it because he sucks at keeping secrets. Brick would be pretty tense about being exposed to Jose last episode, and saying that he's pretty much doomed the next time to go up for elimination. Well, that was already obvious, but it's now even more so. At least he doesn't have to hide him being suspicious of Jose anymore. Bridget would also be feeling pretty guilty about what happened during the kiss moment, thinking about how Jeff will react, but Jose would keep privately justifying to Bridget about what happened, calming her worries. Meanwhile, in economy class, Noah would be talking to his team about recruiting Dawn to their side, as merge is bound to happen soon, and he'd rather make it at 5-5 at least. So, Noah would go to Dawn and ask for a team up, giving his pitch, but Dawn would accept before he can fully begin. Noah would be surprised on how easy it was, but isn't complaining, so would walk over to his team and tell him they have Dawn. Dawn would explain in confessional that she knows Noah is smart and is willing to get rid of Jose, which is why she wants to team up with him, as she can tell that Noah can see through Jose like she can. Moving to the first part of the challenge in Greece, we have Dawn, Bridget, and Noah going for the first round. But as the song goes on during the challenge, Noah would get something out of it that he didn't expect. The song would be called Ruin Love, which is a slower, more dramatic version of Greek Mix. Basically, the entire song has Dawn trying to get Bridget to say what's wrong about what's happening, as Dawn can tell Bridget's off in some way while singing, as Bridget keeps denying anything's happening. While Noah sings back up, he kind of realizes that Dawn is right, Bridget's doing something weird, and notices how Bridget keeps on mentioning Tyler and Jose during the song. Looks like that's a lead that Noah will have to look into later on. But anyway, the result of the challenge is pretty easy, with Dawn being able to tame the bear and able to win the first part. Moving on to the next round. With the first point received by Dawn, we move on to the Parkinson fight. Yes, I know in the original they did this while the scavenger hunt was going on, but for Dawn to compete, we kind of had to wait till the challenge was done. Anyway, Dawn's forced to go for her team again, Tyler goes for Team Superior, and Owen goes for Team Chris. Dawn would see her opponents and immediately back off and giving up, which leads to it basically being a Tyler versus Owen face-off. Owen, though, was a movable wall in this challenge, and I doubt Tyler would be able to beat him, so Owen wins the gold. But it's only one medal in this timeline thanks to the event no longer being turned into a team challenge. While the challenge is going on, though, Noah would decide and ask around Team Superior, trying to figure out what Bridget was talking about during the song. And when Noah asks Brick, he states that Tyler was acting a bit off today, but when Brick asked what was wrong, all Tyler said was that he saw something. Noah would see that's interesting and keep it in mind talking to Tyler after the challenge is over. Right now, it's 1 point Team Victory, 1 point Team Chris, and 0 points Team Superior. Now, for the hurdles, Don, Jose, and Sierra go for the challenge, and Jose ends up winning the round, meaning everyone would be tied for the tiebreaker. But while this is happening, Noah starts working to coax Tyler into coming out with the secret, making Tyler start to worry and act like nothing's wrong, but Noah clearly knows that he's hiding something. As the tiebreaker is about to start with Dawn, Lindsay, and Cody all doing it, before it begins though, Noah would finally be able to get Tyler to spill about the secret that he's keeping about seeing Jose and Bridget kiss. Everyone's shocked that Bridget cheated on Jeff as she tries to defend herself, but the challenge starts before she can fully explain. As the team fly with their wings trying to lift themselves in the air, Lindsay fails like Tyler did in the original, just at the end, which allows the other two to snag gold medals, getting both of the teams first class. Team Superior would be going to elimination, but like in the real episode, Chris would call it a non elimination due to the drama just starting. Bridget and Jose both sighed a relief, being slightly ambiguous on who was going home, though if you're curious, it would have been Bridget. Episode 15, or The X Files, starts with Dawn confronting Noah about last episode. Noah would ask why Dawn's upset as they won, but Dawn's pretty annoyed at Noah for extorting Tyler, saying it was unnecessary. Noah would roll his eyes, call Dawn a hypocrite, pointing out how she was basically doing the same thing with Bridget during the song. Dawn would retort, though, that she was just checking on Bridget and not trying to pry a secret out for personal gain like Noah did. The two end up fighting for a good bit, while Dawn calls off their short lived alliance, but Noah doesn't really mind at this point. Now that Team Superior is divided, he should be able to get by with the 4 votes he has right now. Dawn would have a confessional after this, though, saying how she wanted to work with Noah thinking he would get rid of Jose, but she can tell that Noah plans to keep him around now thanks to the drama that's happening, though there is someone she's been wanting to work with for a while that she thinks she might have a chance to work with now because he's no longer at risk. Meanwhile, in economy class, we have tension on the team being at an all time high, even higher than last episode. Brick would be pretty upset at Bridget and Jose for the whole cheating situation, calling the false couple's actions heinous. As Bridget tries to defend herself once more, saying that if Jeff was there, she would have split off from him to be with Jose. But Tyler is not having any of it, saying if Lindsay dated someone before they officially broke up, he'd be super pissed. Lindsay would also be on that side, agreeing, and the team of divide is pretty clear. Bridget feels like shit about everything and how she's doubling down on it, but the team would split off from each other, leaving Brick left alone to think. At least the tension has nothing to do with him. Maybe if he can actually survive another elimination if they lose. Is it a bad thing for him to be happy that Bridget cheated on Jeff? Not happy for them, but happy for himself. This debate in his head would be stopped by Dawn showing up, which scares Brick, and Brick would ask what she wants. Dawn would offer the two working together in the future to take down Jose, which Brick is kind of shocked at, thinking that Dawn would be mad about him for sabotaging her team a few episodes ago. Dawn would explain that she knew that Jose was the reason why he did it, and Dawn understands. So, with the sabotaging situation being smoothed over, the two would shake hands on their future plans to take down Jose, meaning that they're not working together right now, but they're planning to work together in the future. With the pre-challenge done, we can head straight to the challenge where they head into Area 51. The team split off where Team Chris takes the original Team Chris's path, Team Superior takes Team Amazon's original path, and Dawn just goes on her own, uses her shortcut skills again because I do not know exactly how she gets in. Anyway, the entrances would be close to their original team counterparts, with the musical number also being close to Boyfriend Kisser, but now called Cold Cheaters, as it talks about Bridget and Jose dating with questioning how Jeff will react to the situation. This makes Bridget feel even worse about the whole situation, debating if she should have done this in the first place. Also, Lindsay would be able to use her candy like Cody did in the original episode to get past the minefield, which makes sense because Lindsay got the candy in that reward episode, meaning that they can cross safely. Inside Area 51 itself, Team Chris would have Noah trying to look for Owen while Sierra and Cody go on their clone team side quest, Team Superior having Bridget and Jose go off together while the other three go as a trio, and lastly, Dawn just kind of doing Dawn stuff, looking around, trying to find an artifact of her own. There's not too much going on as they just look around for key artifacts, but the important parts are Brick trying to convince Tyler and Lindsay to target Jose instead of Bridget, with Tyler being partially fine with the idea, with Lindsay rather going with Bridget because of she cheated and it's more her at fault, while Jose has some benefit of the doubt. Though Brick would try to point out the flaws in Lindsay's logic, Lindsay would still rather go with Bridget. Bridget still has second thoughts about her relationship, with Jose justifying it and kissing her to keep her loyal and happy, manipulating her even farther. Lastly would be Owen getting out of the weird chamber thing and Noah realizing that he doesn't have his memory wipes. After that, all the teams end up finding some form of artifact and make a final race outside Area 51. The final sprint to the end plays out with Dawn being in first thanks to her being a solo, so she didn't have to find anyone else after she found her artifact, while Team Chris is in last thanks to the whole Owen fiasco. But it doesn't really matter. Tyler would still stand on the landmine and end up destroying his team's artifact, meaning they would lose once more. Dawn would also get her artifact back first, meaning she wins first class once again, but this time she's all by herself. Although I've half gone over this vote already, I'll go over it a bit more detail. Even if Brick rather eliminate Jose, Lindsay still wants to get rid of Bridget for the whole cheating situation, thinking she's more at fault. And Tyler, being the middleman, being more supportive of his girl, alongside agreeing with Lindsay's points, would tell Brick that they can get rid of Jose next elimination they lose, with Brick sighing and eventually agreeing because he wants to stay in the game and wants to have the numbers. I mean, at least he's weakening Jose a good bit, so that's nice. Also, the couple votes for Brick, by the way, but their votes don't matter again because they're not the majority. Bridget would sigh, saying that she kind of saw it coming, asking for one last kiss from Jose, but he denies her that chance. He gives a fake ass speech about how hearing about her relationship state before the game just right now and how it feels so wrong now that he knows the truth, and he would break up with her right on the spot. Bridget would be heartbroken, saying that Jose was the one who convinced her to keep going, but Jose keeps playing the victim card, with Brick not buying it and Tyler being skeptical, but Lindsay seeing that this is a reasonable option and generally being a bit more naive would fall for it. Bridget ends up jumping off the plane in tears. Looks like she chose the wrong guy. Episode 16, or Panic Eye Hanging Dork, starts with Dawn alone in first class, missing her team, and even though she has been doing fine on her own, she would still enjoy having a teammate like DJ, Joe, Lashana, Harold, or hell, even Alejandro at this point. But she has to keep going, for their sake. Moving on to the economy, it's pretty standard. Sierra being Sierra, no one Owen hanging out, while everyone else on Team Superior chatting away, minus Jose, who's alone in the corner. He's on the outs for his team for the first time and is trying to come up with some idea to get out of the situation. But noticing that Lindsay still trusts him slightly, decides that this is the angle he needs to work with, and as a backup, he can sabotage Dawn. I mean, she's a team of one. How hard could it be? Speaking of said challenge, it would be the same as canon. Each team would grab their emails, and Jose would start working on Lindsay, or try to, but Tyler would block every attempt of it, making Jose quickly realize that if Tyler's around in the game, there's no way he's getting closer to Lindsay. So he starts working on his plan B, sabotaging Dawn. Well, not yet, as he still needs to grab his email. Every player would grab their emo and start their journey across the Badlands, I think. Partway through the 2 day journey, Jose would try to sabotage Dawn when no one's looking, trying to get her off her emu, but it wouldn't work. After getting knocked out by Jose, she would just calmly get back on her emu and just keep going, politely asking somebody in Australia what her life to help her out, which they direct her to the hanging rock that they're supposed to head to. She thanks them as she travels along, happily. After a jump cut of the 2 days, we arrive on the hill where Dawn ends up getting first because she's a solo team, allowing her to gain the electric shears, while Team Superior ends up getting second and getting basic shears. Team Chris, on the other end, has to wait for Owen, but would get guarding shears once they start. So the other two teams would start jumping down, trying to find logos on the sheep as the musical number plays. It's just We Are Shearing Sheep, but with new people in, with Jose and Brick having a small back and forth in the song. Anyway, at the end, Owen would come back, meaning that Team Chris can finally start the challenge. The problem now is this challenge is basically RNG on who wins and who loses, as the people who were here in the original who won the challenge aren't even present, so I can't just say they win. Anyway, though, if I had to guess, I'm going with Team Chris here. With them having the time loss thanks to Owen and Sierra jumping off the cliff like a dumbass, I think it's pretty reasonable to say that they lose here. As for who wins, it doesn't really matter much, but I think it'd be pretty funny for Dawn to win her challenge by herself again. Plus, you could reasonably say her animal whispering skills allow her to figure out what sheep has a marking which doesn't, alongside having the electric shears. That's my best bet there, though. Also, since no one chucks the dingo at Cody because why would they? Cody's actually mentally stable enough for the vote, which means he won't vote randomly / vote Sierra. Well, he's going to vote Sierra anyways, but who cares? And for this vote, do I even need to talk about it? The three guys just all vote Sierra. There's nothing else to it. Even as Sierra tries to direct Cody's vote to Noah, thinking Cody's fallen for her, she hasn't done shit, and Cody would just vote Sierra, excited to finally be free from her. Sierra is somehow still shocked about going home, asking Cody if she still got voted by him, after all they've been through. Noah would then make a snarky comment about how Sierra should have just accepted that Cody will never like her ass, and Sierra would get really upset, about to attack Noah, but Chef would grab her and force her to jump off the plane. After Sierra leaves, Cody would sigh in relief. Finally, after all the suffering, she's gone. Also, I know I haven't brought Sierra and Cody up that much in this What If yet, but that's because they would have been basically the same up to this point, so I didn't see a reason to bring it up. Episode 17, or Sweet and Sour, has Dawn once again being solo in first class, but she decides this time to go to economy and talk to everyone else because she'd rather be talking to someone else than be solo and alone again. Speaking of economy class, it's kind of the same as usual, but Cody for once is not being called to death by Sierra, thanks to her being eliminated. It feels really nice for Cody, but also strangely lonely. Not that he misses her, oh god no, but Cody does kind of knows how he's definitely on the outs of his team. Maybe he could have kept her for the sake of his game, but it's not that important. Though they could easily lose the next challenge thanks to her not being gone. This internal conflict would be going on in his head as Don pops up, commenting on it for the sake of the viewers so they understand what the heck is going on in his head, which scares the ever living hell out of Cody. Anyway, outside of the comedy, that's really all that happens before the challenge starts. The first part of the challenge is the same, and the musical number would be sort of close to canon, as Cody still builds Gwen's face because he misses her. But not because she was just eliminated, but because he hasn't seen her all season. Meanwhile, the other two teams would just build boats, but Dawn makes a smaller one because she's only a single person. Anyway, once they get onto the water, Team Chris would lob off Gwen's head so they can use it as a boat. Also, note that since Team Superior has more team members and probably would be able to figure out what they're doing faster, they end up finishing first, so they would end up getting the Flint advantage. On the water, each of the teams would be traveling to the first meeting point, with Jose gassing up Lindsay as the ride goes on, with Brick and Tyler being a bit confused on why he's doing it, but Lindsay's indulging in the compliments. Team Chris would have Noah planning about the future merge, as it's pretty much bound to happen soon as they've already lost over half the contestants, so likely it's a non-elimination this episode and merge will be announced next. Lastly, Dawn would be interacting with all the animals on the water, with not much special going on for her, just being cute and all. As for who's the captain on each team, Dawn's the captain for her team for obvious reasons. Noah has been kind of the leader on Team Chris for a while, so he would take the captain role. And lastly, Lindsay would be the captain for Team Superior, as Jose would volunteer her to piss off Rick, who would have been pushing for being the captain at the start of the episode, pointing out his experience. But Tyler, wanting to believe in his girlfriend, agrees with Jose to make sure that Lindsay's the captain. That means Admiral Lindsay Herodotus would be born right here. Also, note a small change in the challenge would be that whoever gets the flag first would get first class, but afterwards the other two teams must fight out the ship battle, and whoever has their ship sink first would be losing and going up to elimination. Along the water, Team Chris would be in last thanks to using Gwen's face as a boat, but Lindsay, desiring battle in her admiral form, would make her team turn around and attack Team Chris in order to make sure they get last by sinking their ship. Brick would question the idea, pointing how they could probably just grab the flag and win first class, but Jose and Tyler would side with Lindsay. Jose mainly for strategy, and Tyler to be a supportive boyfriend. Brick, realizing he might end up losing the loyalty of Tyler and Lindsay and they might side with Jose in the future if he keeps pushing, would decide to just go with it. So the two teams would fight out, as Dawn is able to grab the flag while everyone's distracted and winning first class for the third time in a row. Third or fourth, I forgot count. I can't count right now, what the fuck. Team Chris and Team Superior battle it out, firing cannonballs back and forth, but thanks to Brick's military background, he's able to more likely hit his shots and likely take down Chris's ship faster. Well, that's the case when Lindsay isn't trying to handle the cannon as the captain. The battle would be pretty close, ending with the teams running out of ammo and Team Superior ship starting to sink, but Lindsay has the lovely idea to use herself as a human cannonball to take down Team Chris. Tyler would allow her to do this begrudgingly as she blasts off and able to hit Gwen's face, destroying it, causing the ship to sink before her team ship does, making Team Chris the losers of the challenge. Even if you don't think this is that realistic, it doesn't matter who loses here. It's a non-elimination round still. I just wanted to be silly with it and try to make an episode fun. Anyway, on to the aftermath. Episode 18, or the Aftermath 3, Aftermath After Mayhem, is no longer a comeback challenge as we already have 8 people left in the show, so this would play out like a normal Aftermath special, which kinda is ironic because they would play pretty closely to the Aftermath 1. The interviews would start with DJ, who in this timeline actually enjoyed his time on the show, but kinda wonders what would have happened if he took off the necklace. So he would do it in the Aftermath studio, and a ton of animals appear out of nowhere, with him accidentally hurting a ton of them in a slapstick humor style. Afterwards, he would shakily put on the necklace again, saying he's never taking that shit off. Afterwards, Blaney would try to send out Bridget, but Jeff would drag in Sierra instead. She has her interview, which would be mostly talking about Cody and that, and Sierra would reunite with her old friends from season 2. But they all feel a bit awkward about the whole situation, commenting how it feels like the Sierra on the show was completely different from the Sierra they got to know over the past year. She would feel a bit sad from her friends being weird about her, but would defend herself saying that she was just trying to show her love for Cody. She would then have a song proving her point, calling XOXO Codykins a hyper pop song about her love, which just weirded out her old friends even more. Lastly would be Bridget, who plays out her apology and song like in the original, but it's now different. The song is now called Wrong Choice. It's more of a power ballad with her talking about how she chose the wrong guy, and Bridget begging for Jeff to take her back and forgive her. And as much as I want to say Jeff wouldn't forgive her in this timeline, they made up so fast in canon, I think they effectively do the same thing here. Meaning that the Aftermath ends like the same Aftermath 1 in canon, with Jeff and Bridget making out, with Blaney being pissed about her plans failing, getting Jeff and Bridget to brawl. Episode 19, or Niagara Brawl, starts by skipping all the pre-challenge interaction stuff and jumping straight into the action. Everyone drops down into the water, short of being near Niagara Falls, with everyone panicking and going into their swan boats and paddling, begging for their lives. Luckily enough, though, there are some animals nearby to help out Dawn, and Dawn would get them to help out everyone else in the swan boats, pushing them to safety, which she would thank the animals as they leave. After they make it out alive, Chris would send everyone into the theater and formally announce the merge. Everyone would be pretty excited about making it this far, celebrating, and saying goodbye to their old teammates, some more excitedly than others. Chris would then announce the honeymoon challenge, with Noah commenting how there's only 2 girls left, with Chris saying he knows and that he assigned 2 of the guys to be brides for the challenge. After all, embarrassment is good for ratings. Those 2 ended up being Brick and Noah, as I think they're the people Chris would find the most funny in the dress, which both would complain about, but Chris doesn't really care. After all, he just wants to get good TV. Moving on to the slot spins, I'm going to pair people who make the most sense together, as that's kind of what the show did originally, so I'm willing to elect to make the pairs make the most sense. So the pairs are Lindsay and Tyler, Noah and Owen, Jose and Brick, and Don and Cody is kind of the leftover pair. With that decided, though, we can move on to the challenge. For the first part, Cody would actually be trying to communicate with his partner, as it's no longer Sierra, which makes things go decently for them as a pair. Jose would be pretty good at communicating, just as Alejandro was, getting his 2 of the lead, getting Brick the dress first. But Jose would specifically pick out the most girly one to embarrass him because he's getting sick of Brick. Alongside of that, Owen would do the same with communicating as he did in the original, allowing his team to pass, even if they struggle. Lastly, Lindsay and Tyler would struggle thanks to Lindsay mixing up directions, but they're eventually able to get to the dress as well. So with all the teams getting dresses, we move on to the part 2. Also, during this part, Blatantly's song would be replaced with a song called Blinded by Love, which is obviously a love song. Anyway, we can move on to the actual second part of the challenge. As for reward for winning last challenge, Brick and Jose are allowed to go first on the tightrope. Brick and Jose would be having some back and forth banter, making fun of each other, with Jose pointing fun at Brick wearing a dress, while Brick makes fun of Jose bridal carrying a guy. They would continue to have the same back and forth banter as the other teams go ahead on the tightrope. Lindsay and Tyler would be pretty cute, just flirting and all that type of stuff, but thanks to Tyler being clumsy as fuck, he would trip almost immediately kicking them out of the challenge. Noah and Owen would struggle like Owen blatantly did in the original, and Don and Cody would be doing fine, but there's nothing particularly good or bad they're doing. The thing is, though, unlike Alejandro in Canada where he falls off on purpose, Jose wouldn't, as he knows he's a target right now and needs the immunity, and even if Brick would try to sabotage Jose, which is 50-50 if he does, Jose would just make a comment about Brick winning underhanded like how he did with Joe last season, making Brick stop sabotaging thanks to being reminded of his past. Anyway, this would allow the 2 to reach the end of the course and answer the custom questions, gaining them immunity. For the vote, with Jose and Brick being immune, the 2 major targets are no longer options for voting, making things a lot more complicated. Brick would bring Dawn over to the Lindsay Tyler group and make a 4-person alliance. The 4 people would discuss the vote and land on Noah, mainly thanks to Dawn, but it would be a pretty easy consensus. Jose would then overhear this conversation and smile. This is a perfect opportunity. Meanwhile, Noah's alliance would talk about who they want to vote out, with Jose showing up. The 3 would ask what Jose wants, and Jose would mention to Noah that he's the target tonight, and the other side is mainly targeting him thanks to Dawn. But he will vote with them if they pick whoever he votes for. Noah would be fine with it, as they need another vote anyway, but is a little surprised he's a target, but at the same time, looking at the options, he's kinda not. Jose would whisper the name to Noah, telling them to vote for Tyler, as with him gone, Jose thinks he can swing Lindsay back into his corner permanently. As Jose would leave, Owen would ask him if they can trust Jose, but Noah would say that they need the votes anyway, and besides, even if Jose isn't trustworthy, the second they don't need him anymore, they can just dump him. But for now, he is necessary. This leads to the vote being a tie between Tyler and Noah. Once the tie is revealed, Chris announces a tiebreaker, with the episode's theme being weddings and wedding cakes often being several tiers. It'd be a cake stacking contest. How this works is each player must stack progressively smaller and smaller cakes on top of each other without letting the whole thing come crashing down at once. But once a player is placed down, they cannot move it. First person to make their cake drop would be eliminated. The 2 guys would start stacking cakes, but Tyler, being Tyler, eventually would trip, causing his cake to fall on him, getting all over him, and making him lose the challenge, meaning he is eliminated. Tyler is sad about his elimination, but proud to make it to merge and how far he got, and also happy to have his girl back. Brick and Lindsay would give him a pretty nice goodbye as he takes the jump, with Jose in the background smiling. Everything is falling into place, he would say in confessional before the episode ends. Episode 20, or Chinese Fake Out, starts with Jose and Brick in first class, enjoying the wedding cake separately as Jose would walk over and begin to talk to Brick. So, what are your plans for next vote out, Brick? Well, hopefully it's voting your sorry butt off this plane. And if I do go, what happens next? Or what happens this elimination if I win immunity again? Well, you see, just what I thought. You haven't thought that far ahead. I'll put it bluntly. You don't stand a chance against the trio of Noah, Owen, and Cody. I don't either. With Noah's brains, Owen's brawn, and Cody's ability to give them the majority after this elimination, well, at least most of the majority, if one of them don't get sent home today, they'll all make it to final three. You want to win, right? I know your current living situation's dire from what I've heard. So, how about we call a truce for just this one vote and target the three friends? Brick would look to the side, debating what he should say, and meekly says he'll think on it. Jose, satisfied with getting inside Brick's head, would leave, grabbing a few items from first class to give to Lindsay as he heads to economy class. Inside economy class, Noah, Owe, and Cody would be continue bonding, cracking more jokes amongst themselves and all laughing. Meanwhile, Dawn would be helping out Lindsay go through the motions of Tyler's elimination, with Lindsay thanking Dawn for the help. Jose would then step in and give the items that he prepped for Lindsay, which Lindsay would thank him for. Jose would then steal the conversation from Dawn, letting Lindsay and Jose have a chat for a while, so Jose can start working Lindsay into his web. Dawn would have a confessional seeing this, extremely mad, knowing exactly what Jose is trying to do, and hopes that she can stop it before it's too late. Moving on to the challenge, Chris would be getting on the phone from a call from the producers, so everyone would start before hearing some of the important information of the challenge. As everyone races to the vehicles, Brick and Jose would be in the lead, taking the bike and rickshaw respectively. The reason why Jose takes the rickshaw is to allow Lindsay to join them as they travel, which Lindsay would be flattered to do and jumps on the rickshaw, getting dragged by Jose. Don ends up taking the donkey, as the only reason why Cody got it in the original was because Sierra gave it to him, and Cody would take the pogo stick. Noah takes the skateboard, being kind of midway through, and lastly, Owen ends up with the tricycle because it would be funny. Along the right of the Great Wall, Jose would continue his work on Lindsay, which is going pretty swimmingly, as the two are chatting, enjoying themselves, even though Lindsay gets distracted wanting a tour of the entire place, which Jose would indulge in, needing her loyalty. Dawn gets the donkey to race ahead at a decent pace, taking time with the donkey as they go. Cody would be doing fine on the pogo stick as Noah's doing good on the skateboard, but Owen would be struggling on the tricycle, ending up getting stuck in the same crack that Courtney did in the original, which Noah has to help him out of. But Owen ends up hitting the same landmine Courtney did as the original, thanks to him being distracted talking to the other two. Owen, as a result, blasts off again and ends up not finishing the course, resulting in him not being in the next part of the challenge. Even if Noah wanted to go back for him, he got blasted so far away, I doubt Noah could, so he would just continue alongside Cody. This means that, again, Owen would be out of the eating part of the challenge, which makes it a whole lot more interesting than if Owen was in it, because it would just be an automatic win for him. The musical number would still play out during the buffet challenge, and the first round is Donkey Meat, which Dawn would obviously refuse. She would call Chris cool for serving up her friend on a silver platter, but it doesn't really matter as she's the first person out. Afterwards would be mealworms, which Lindsay would instantly barf at the idea of eating, getting her out. Next would be dried starfish, which I think Cody gets out on, as I don't have any decent food-related eats of thinking he can eat it fast or eat gross food well, so I think he goes out here. Afterwards is the random last pile of sludge, disgusting thing, and I think Noah would be able to eat it first, scoring the win. It seems kind of weird, but in Redonkulous Race, he's literally eating Chinese street food and is able to do it at a super fast pace, and he doesn't complain at all, just complaining that it's hot, not that it's gross. So compared to people who don't have any particular eating feats of gross food, I think it's pretty reasonable to give Noah the win here. Owen would celebrate with his buddy chomping down the food like he would have, and Chris would ask Noah who to give first class to. He's about to pick Owen, but Owen would interject, telling Noah to give it to Cody. Cody would be surprised, but appreciate this pretty greatly. For the vote, Brick would be talking to Dawn about the vote, and Dawn is super annoyed at Brick, siding with Jose on it, voting for Owen of all people. Brick would explain his thought process, though, and that they just don't have the votes right now for Jose, thanks to Lindsay and Jose being in good graces again, and that this is likely their only chance to survive the vote. Dawn would say that she can get the votes, but Brick doubts it, saying he's going to vote for Owen and walks off. Dawn's annoyed and decides she can just do this plan without him and goes over to the guys' alliance, warning them about what's going to happen, but none of them would believe her. Noah would snark, "You really think that instead of people like Brick and Jose, people are voting this tubby guy out? Psh, like he's the least threatening guy I've ever met. Well, minus Cody." "Hey!" Cody would chirp. Dawn would try to tell him that she's being serious and get them to vote for Jose, but Noah would brush her off as Dawn leaves in a minor huff. The guys then talk about who they are going to vote for, with Noah saying that they're going to vote for Dawn. As after what she tried to pull in Noah's eyes, and Dawn winning 4 competitions in her by herself in pre-merge, she's clearly a competition threat, and it's due time where she wins another competition. Plus, he knows once Jose is gone, Noah's likely Dawn's next target. So the 3 guys vote for her, leading to another tie round with Owen and Dawn, but this round was a double elimination, and it will still be a double elimination. Everyone is shocked by both of them going home, but the two take their parachutes and are about to leave, though Dawn has a few parting words of advice for everyone that she wants to say. Brick, I understand your desire to win and your choice tonight, but if you keep picking money over what's right, you'll end up being back in the spot where you started the season. Noah, I hope you're proud of yourself. If you just listened to me and voted for Jose, your closest friend wouldn't be going home alongside myself. Lindsay, please stop falling into Jose's web again. He's going to trick you and eliminate you like nothing. Jose would ask to just eliminate the two, but Chris would let Dawn continue, liking the drama she's making. So Dawn would continue her speech. Cody, I'm proud of your independence from Sierra and wish you the best in the competition. Jose, you're the most evil man I've ever met, with a soul more black than the night sky without any stars. Lastly, I want to wish the 2 poor souls down in the cargo hold good luck, and hope in the future they see this game isn't worth their suffering. With that, though, her speech would be done and she would take the jump, as does Owen, who gives Noah and Cody one last hug before he goes. Noah would look off to the side, feeling bad for the elimination, and kind of feeling a little stupid. Episode 21, or African Lion Safari, starts with Noah and Cody in first class. Noah's pretty upset with Cody trying to help him out, thinking it's related to Owen, but Noah is actually more upset about being blinded by biases and not seeing what was in front of him. Noah would tell Cody that he got far too comfortable in this game and now that he has to focus up and it's game time. Cody would be curious, asking what Noah means by that, but Noah would state that they have to plan out the final 5 and even beyond that. Noah would grab a spreadsheet, and well, not a spreadsheet, like a piece of paper, and start pointing out how it's a 2v2 split with Brick being in the middle of the final 5. So they should probably recruit Brick in the challenge, which should be pretty easy considering how Brick likely wants Jose gone. Cody would like the idea, and the two would keep on strategizing, basically going through the entire endgame and trying to figure out who they can beat and who they can eliminate. Meanwhile, in economy class, Lindsay and Jose would continue talking, with Brick being alone. Brick would try to talk to Lindsay, but she's far too focused on Jose's conversation, so Brick would decide to wander off instead, though gets pulled away by Chef into the cockpit. Brick would ask what's up, with Chef saying that he just wanted to talk to him as they got along pretty well last season. Brick would chuckle at the mention of last season, wanting to forget it, but Chef would then bring up that he could do the illegal alliance again. I mean, at this point, it's the final 5 and Brick has no allies left. Plus, with how few rounds there are, he could easily win every single challenge thanks to Chef's illegal help, and no one would bat an eye, or at least big enough to be important. Chef would also point out how he would gain even more money than the original, only wanting a 75-25 split. Chef would offer his hand to Brick, and Brick would think about accepting it, but would say no. He has to win fair and square, and what Don said last episode kind of got to his head. Chef would say his funeral, rolling his eyes and turning back to drive the plane, but Brick would walk off, having a confessional saying, if he's going to go down, he's going to go down with honor this time, and not screaming like he did last season. Heading to the first part of the challenge, which is carrying the plums and trying to hit the gourd, Jose and Brick would do good with carrying the plums while the other 3 do bad, but when it comes to the shooting portion, things would be a bit different. Brick is able to hit his first thanks to his military background, while Jose is also able to hit his gourd successfully. Noah would eventually be able to hit his too, but Lindsay and Cody both fail the task. That would mean that Brick gets 6 trank balls, Jose and Noah have 3 trank balls, and Lindsay and Cody have only 1 trank ball plus no slingshot. Once that portion is done, Chris will reveal that they're hunting a feral Stacy and Ezekiel, and if you're wondering, yes, thanks to there being 2 people available for capture, there could be 2 immunity winners. But if one person manages to catch both people, they gain soul immunity instead. So after Chris explains that and releases Zeke and Stacy to get a head start, the challenge would officially begin. To start the challenge, the duos of Lindsay and Jose and Noah and Cody would be working together, especially since 2 of them don't have a slingshot, while Brick would be going alone. I mean, this challenge is kind of built for him after all. He also wouldn't have his trank ball stolen, as he wouldn't go anywhere near Jose, actively not trusting him and knowing him for sabotage. So once the lion arrives as he takes Heather's path, Brick would be able to just use one of his trank balls to deal with it, meaning he doesn't have to run and scream. Meanwhile, Jose and Lindsay end up falling into quicksand like Alejandro and Duncan did in the original, as they would take Alejandro's path. But they're able to get out the same way that the 2 did in the original. Noah and Cody wouldn't be doing too much better, though, with Cody getting kidnapped by the monkeys, well, baboons, this time fully conscious, as Noah is forced to go on a side quest to save his ass. I mean, he's not going to let someone die. But thanks to that, we have a moment where Jose and Lindsay see something moving in the bushes and run up to it, with a result of Jose shooting Noah and Noah shooting Jose. Lindsay would just end up standing there confused on what the heck happened, with Chris forcing a song to occur, which would still be Wake Up, but with some differences. The song is now primarily Lindsay singing, with her trying to wake up the two sleepyheads, while we see minor moments between Brick and Cody singing about their current situations, with Cody dealing with the baboons being weird towards him, and Brick hunting down Stacy, catching her at the end of the song, gaining immunity for himself. So that's one of the slots down. Now we have to move on to the second person. During the half hour where Noah and Jose are asleep, Cody would be forced to deal with the baboons. He tries to talk to them and tries to leave, but baboons stop him at every which point, trying to continue being around him. But at this point, Cody's really fed up with their asses, as with him being free from Sierra's coddling for so long, dealing with the same thing again with baboons would really piss him off. So he would decide to uppercut them, which we know he can do from Cannon Grease's pieces. After he uppercuts the baboon that was touching him in the jaw, he would order the rest to leave, which, scared of him, they would do so. Cody would be pretty surprised at work, but would celebrate and leave, trying to find someone with trank balls or just the plane so he can not die out here in the wilderness. Moving back to the sleepyheads, Lindsay would be standing guard where Jose and Noah are resting until Pharaoh Ezekiel would run by, which Lindsay decides to give chase, trying to win the challenge, leaving the other two behind. She would start using the trank ball she borrowed from Jose and Noah, and eventually, after many shots, would be able to actually hit Ezekiel, gaining herself immunity as well. Lindsay celebrates about her win, and we would head to the vote. There's only one really important thing that happens before the vote. After the challenge, Jose would be pissed at Lindsay for leaving him out dead in the Serengeti, with Lindsay trying to apologize, but Jose wouldn't be having any of it. He ends up losing his cool and going all out on Lindsay, insulting everything about her, ironically mirroring how Alejandro insulted Dakota last season when he decided to lash out on her, but instead of being privately, it's completely publicly. Though, instead of running away in tears like Dakota did, Lindsay would bite back, insulting Jose, pointing out all of his flaws, and kicking him down off the pedestal he's been acting on the entire season. I mean, she's done this before with one mean person, why not do it to another? This would result in turning into a screaming match, with Lindsay deciding to use one of the trank balls she has to knock out Jose. After which, Lindsay decides to mess with Jose's biggest pride, his appearance, as revenge. It wouldn't be anything permanent or anything, just doing his makeup in a full glam look and dragging over Brick to help make a dress for him to put on Jose. But thanks to Jose being knocked out for so long before the vote, he wouldn't have any time to take off the outfit or the makeup before his elimination. Jose would grumble as everyone taunts him for wearing the makeup and dress, and Jose would swear revenge for the humiliation he faced today. Lindsay would just smile back as Brick would taunt Jose cockily, saying that he beat him, with Jose rolling his eyes and jumping off the plane. But that means we have ourselves our final four. Also, neither Lindsay or Brick would be allowed to bring anyone to first class, as there's already two people in there, and I think that's enough already. Episode 22, Arapa Fui, starts with Lindsay and Brick talking in first class. Lindsay is apologizing to Brick for not fully believing him about Jose earlier, but Brick forgives her for the awesome stunt she pulled against him. The two would keep chatting the day away, mainly about their passions for fashion, funny enough, and eventually end up promising to each other a final two deal in order to counter Noah and Cody obviously going to final two together. This would be pretty simple, just agree not to vote each other, that's it. Alongside that, they would get the two candy baskets they would get as a prize for winning the previous challenge, which Alejandro originally got, which Brick would give the extra basket to Lindsay because she likes candy a lot. Speaking of that said team up, Noah and Cody would be talking, trying to plan some sort of way to get rid of either Brick or Lindsay without dealing with a tiebreaker, as both of them are pretty weak. If Brick loses, Noah should be able to convince Lindsay to get out Brick, either by manipulating her or convincing her that Brick is a comp threat. But if Brick wins, he doubts he can convince Brick right now. They just have to hope that doesn't happen, because who knows what a tiebreaker would be. It would likely be in his favor. Or Lindsay's, who knows. As the final four walk out to the challenge, Cody would see the candy that Lindsay has and ask if he can have some. Lindsay, being a nice person, would agree, and the two would gorge on the candy before the challenge even begins. Chris would explain the challenge to the final four and point out how Lindsay has two baskets at this point, which Brick would ask for his basket back, which Lindsay replies as it's pretty empty right now, and she would give Cody the rest of the candy inside of it. So Brick and Lindsay would have baskets for the challenge. Also, the colors for the challenge for everyone is Lindsay with green, Noah with blue, Brick with pink, and Cody with purple. These will be important later, but let's get on to the challenge. Pairs would break off the search for eggs, but not the traditionally established pairs. Instead, it'd be Cody and Lindsay and Noah and Brick. The main reason why this is happening is because Cody's trying to siphon more candy off Lindsay, but still, useful enough. The two would end up looking for eggs as a duo and sort of bonding over the chocolate and all the candy. Noah would use this as a chance to manipulate Brick, though. Hey, look at those two. They seem to be getting pretty close. I mean, it makes me wonder who Lindsay would choose in the final three, or maybe a final four if I win immunity. I know what you're doing, Noah, and it's not going to work. Lindsay and I are loyal to each other. You say that, but Lindsay forgets people like that. I mean, she forgot her own boyfriend this season. Who's to say that she doesn't forget you, someone who she's known for even less time? Brick would look down, wanting to trust Lindsay, but kind of seeing Noah's point here. Noah would then offer Brick a deal, basically that if they either of them win immunity today, then they get their alliance mate to vote for the other ally on the opposing duo. I.e., if Noah's immune, Cody and him vote for Lindsay, and if Brick's immune, him and Lindsay vote for Cody. This is a fake deal, but Brick would accept it. Anyway, as everyone starts grabbing their eggs and making their way up the mountain, both Noah and Cody would be struggling without having a basket, causing them to drop several eggs and having to go back down several times. And with Lindsay being, well, Lindsay, she would likely drop a few eggs of her own, even with a basket, thanks to the boulders. So Brick is the only person who I can see not having any struggles, so he would be able to win the challenge and get the advantage. The order of the challenge would be Brick, Cody, Noah, and lastly, Lindsay, if you're wondering. Remember how I stated it was important to tell you what colors were which for each person? That's because Sierra's chick hatched and her eggs were green. While Lindsay had the green eggs, I don't think she would have been able to give her egg to anyone else to hatch because she would have just been the person holding it, meaning that the bird imprints on her. So as the song Condor plays out, she's able to drop her eggs into the nest and win immunity. But it wouldn't really matter too much since this is a non elimination round still. The votes would be revealed as a tie, though, between Noah and Brick if you're curious. This would calm Brick's worries because she did vote for Noah, but as Lindsay ends up taking Cody to first class thanks to their bonding today, Brick would get his nerves back up and a whole lot more worried. Episode 23, or Drama Heller, starts with Noah continuing his scheme of trying to work Brick against Lindsay. He already has part 1 done, which is the deal he made yesterday, which is already good for him, but he would like the two to not work together at all. That was just a backup plan, basically. Ideally, if the duo completely splits up, then he and Cody can vote for Brick without a tiebreaker happening, as it'd be a 1-to-1-to-2 vote. So, Noah would get Cody to ask Lindsay for a final 2 deal in first class, so he can splice together the audio when she says no to make it look like she said yes, using the camera stuff Alejandro uses in canon, but audio player instead of a picture. Cody would feel bad about doing this, but Noah would just remark he's there and we're doing anything we can to win at this point. And Cody should distract Lindsay in order to make sure that the plan can go off without a hitch. Cody would follow Noah's orders because he thinks it's a smart plan, but he would be kind of feeling bad about it and doing it only begrudgingly. Panning to the morning in economy class, Noah would start his plan by telling Brick that he should probably hear what's going on in first class, where Cody would start the RDO message and distract Lindsay, who would see the tape, but Cody would tell her it's not that important in a panicky tone. Once the thing would fully play out, Brick is annoyed that Lindsay is double crossing him, and Noah's acting like he's annoyed about Cody doing the same thing, and tries to offer a final 2 deal to Brick, which Brick would accept, saying he's annoyed at the moment with Lindsay. Noah would be pretty happy in confessional saying his plan went off without any problems. After that, though, once Lindsay is done talking to Cody, she ends up seeing the tape and plays out of curiosity, being confused about the audio that played. She never said that before, or did she? Whatever, it's nothing probably important. She would toss the tape away and the challenge would eventually begin. Moving to the Dinosaurs challenge, Lindsay would be asking to do the challenge together with Brick, but he would give her the cold shoulder and decide to work on his own, muttering how he can only trust himself at this point. And Lindsay would be confused about this, but decide to move on with the craft supply she grabbed to make her dinosaur alone. She can do it, it'll be fine. Cody would look on, kind of feeling bad for splitting the two apart as friends, but make his dinosaur and just try to ignore what he's feeling. Noah would also be talking to him for a little bit before he fully starts making his dinosaur and kind of just say, again, we're doing anything we can to win. Nothing special. Anyone would do the same. Eventually, time would be up though, and the dinosaurs would be revealed. To start, Lindsay made her Fashionosaurus, a dinosaur-human hybrid with a tasteful outfit to match. Noah would have made Chrysosaur like Heather did because it just makes sense for him to do that as a character. Cody would still have his Codiodon, which Noah would point out it's made of dinosaur shit because he's kind of a smartass. And lastly, Brick would have made something called a Champiodon, which is a T-Rex mixed with a wrestler theme that would be holding a giant gold belt above them, but the bones would be heavily mismatched, making it look extremely choppy and incomplete. Though, now that I've explained all the dinosaurs, we can see how they are judged by the other players. First, Noah would sarcastically state that Cody's shit dinosaur is so great, but get shocked for it, and complain that sarcasm gets shocked. If he's actually being honest, though, he would pick Lindsay, as Noah would say it's the only one that's decently made. Brick would be up next and begrudgingly pick Lindsay's. I mean, he loves fashion and it looks really good, so of course he has to pick it. Cody would be next and pick Brick, thinking his dinosaur looks pretty cool. Lastly would be Lindsay and also picks up Brick because she doesn't like Chris and Cody's dinosaur is made of shit, so Brick is kind of the only choice here. This means that Brick and Lindsay tie for first place, and Chris would elect to give Lindsay the win, acting as a tiebreaker. So Lindsay gets the toast digger, Brick would get the pickaxe, Noah gets the pail because he acts as a tiebreaker for Noah and Cody and likes Noah sucking up to him, and Cody would get nothing. Moving to the second part, Lindsay and Brick would go at it alone while Cody and Noah lead as a pair. Chef would still be chucking rocks at everyone like he was in canon, so while Lindsay's digging with her drill, she ends up getting lodged into a hole where Brick ends up showing up, seeing a barrel she found, and debates on taking it for himself. This is where a song called Traits of a Traitor would play, which is a Lindsay Brick duet in a similar style to the original This Is How We'll End It, at least musical wise. And the two would end up singing how they feel by betrayed by each other. It would end with Lindsay clearing up the whole situation about the tape recorder she found, and the two making amends with Brick feeling really fucking stupid. Brick would save Lindsay and apologize for being so gullible, but Lindsay would get it as she's been gullible several times too. Each of the duo would take a barrel to Chris, but during the time that they wasted with the whole rock situation and singing, Noah would have found the barrel by this point, meaning that Noah has immunity, and we would head to a vote. For the vote, Noah would approach Brick about planning to get out Lindsay, but Brick would confront Noah at this point, knowing the trick he tried to pull today alongside of Cody. Brick would openly state that Noah is lucky he's safe tonight, or else he would have been doomed in the tiebreaker, but instead it's Cody. Brick would walk away as Noah sighs, saying, "Well, that didn't work out." Anyway, the votes would come into a tie with Lindsay and Cody, as Lindsay seems easier to be in a tiebreaker, at least in Noah and Cody's eyes. The final four tiebreakers, one last search for the three original bears that were meant to be buried in canon, the ones filled with a ton of dangerous bullshit, and the first one to find two of them would win. They also still get to use what they earned in the first part. Cody would call that factor unfair, but Chris would just say he should have won the first part if he wants to have any advantage here. The tiebreaker starts and Lindsay would swiftly find the first barrel, getting attacked by the animals inside though, giving Cody enough time to find the second while she's distracted. But eventually, though, Lindsay would be able to refocus getting the animals off of her and find the last barrel, winning the tiebreaker. Cody would be upset about his elimination, but kind of accepted his fate. Cody then wishes the final three good luck as he takes the drop of shame, which happens because Sierra no longer blows up the plane because she's not here. Noah would grumble at this elimination. Of course, Cody had to lose that. Now he's going to get teamed up on the final three. All he can hope for is an intelligence challenge, I guess. Episode 24, or Aftermath for Hawaiian Style, opens with Jeff and Bridget opening the show for the first time in the entire season, swiftly introducing the 5 contestants who got in the boot since then. There are no more concerns about the final three being stuck in Drumheller anymore, because, they aren't. But the song Who You're Gonna Root For would still play out pretty normally, talking about the final three of Brick, Noah, and Lindsay. After the song, though, everyone would split into teams on who they want to win and who they want to lose. Here are the groups on screen, and reminder that Zeke and Stacey are still feral and are inside the plane, so they wouldn't get to vote, alongside Jeff and Bridget, who don't want to show bias on the show. I'm not going to go over why each person roots for who, so I'm going to only go over the important ones. Zoe would comment about seeing Rick's growth throughout the season and would be quite happy for him, noting how hard it is to change sometimes. Zoe would say this while bumping elbows at Courtney, who would chuckle and kind of agree with her. Jose would mention he'd rather vote for no one, but Noah pissed him off the least, so he gets his vote. Alejandro would then taunt Jose for being beaten and humiliated by Brick and Lindsay, of all people, which Jose would growl at. Lastly, Tyler and Beth would be cheering for Lindsay really loud, with Beth coming up with a team chant for her team to do, but no one would follow it because it's Beth. Sad. When it comes to who competes for each of the respective finalists, Tyler would do it for Lindsay, Courtney does it for Brick, and Owen would do it for Noah. As for which animals each of them select, Tyler would go with the dolphin for Lindsay, thinking about how cute she is and how cute dolphins are. Courtney would pick the Doberman for Brick, as having a decently tough exterior, you can get them to listen to you if you scream at them, representing Brick pretty well. Lastly, Owen would go with the raccoon for Noah to represent his intelligence and small size. After that's selected, though, Jeff would introduce the challenge and the song part, which Courtney is amped to do because she's been wanting to sing all season. The song would start playing out and it'd be pretty close to the original, just Tyler taking Harold's place here. And in fact, in positioning, he would also take Harold's place, as Courtney would easily put the lay on the Doberman as, if you can do it with a Jaguar, you can do it with a Doberman. And Owen would fly off completely failing like he did in the original. So that means that Brick has the wheelbarrow, Lindsay has the baby stroller, and Noah gets a whole load of nothing. Episode 25 for Planes, Trains, and Hot Airmobiles opens up with Noah all alone in first class. Although he's enjoying the amenities, he's worried about being in the final three and how it will go. He can't scheme his way out of this one, like he tried to do in the final four, so all Noah can hope for is to win the final challenge or just pray it's a purge and not lose the final challenge. I mean, it's pretty likely at this point. All semifinal rounds have been followed by the last place person is auto eliminated, so it would make sense for this one to be that case too. So all he has to do is beat Lindsay. Meanwhile, in economy class, Brick and Lindsay would be chatting, submitting their final two plans with each other. But we can move on to the challenge, which would be slightly different thanks to Sierra not destroying the plane. Chris would give each of the final three a GPS and leave them in Drumheller, explaining that their goal is to reach Tijuana Beach to get to Hawaii using their wits and whatever in the plane cargo hold junk that they didn't use during the season. After that, Chris would leave on the jumbo jet heading to Hawaii. Noah would jump to look for supplies in the rubble, while Rick would pull Lindsay to form some form of strategy in order to win. But Lindsay would just say that they should just run really fast. I mean, if they constantly traveled, Noah could waste his time trying to find anything useful in the rubble. Brick would disagree with the idea, but before he can counter and say anything else, Lindsay would have already wandered off. Sighing, Brick would decide that he should check the junk for anything of use to at least beat Noah, or at least slow him down. While Lindsay wanders off, she comes across the train tracks like Heather did in the original and decides to take the train, because that's a whole lot faster than being on foot. Brick and Noah, on the other hand, would be looking through the rubble, with Noah trying to find stuff for a hot air balloon, which Brick would try to fight him for and ends up being destroyed in the process. The two would end up arguing for a little bit before having to deal with a feral Stacy and feral Ezekiel, who were dumped out of the plane rubble like how Ezekiel was there the entire time in the original. So while those two were distracted, Lindsay is on the move, traveling to Mexico via train, excited for it, and trying to talk on the walkie-talkie to the others, checking on them. But all she would hear is the carnage of the other two being destroyed by the feral freaks, so she just assumes it's faulty and hangs up the walkie-talkie, complaining that Chris never gives them anything that actually works. As the storm comes in, Noah and Brick are dealing with the feral duo when a song is called. This song would be called Final Fight, a manic but dramatic song showing off Noah and Brick having to hold their own against Ezekiel and Stacy, as Lindsay would get to vibe on the train for a comedic tone shift in the song. The song would end with both Stacy and Ezekiel getting struck by lightning and making Brick decide that the rubble's not worth it and would try to leave, encountering the horses like Alejandro did in the original, just around this point. Meanwhile, Noah would finally find all the stuff for a hot air balloon and take off. The thing is, though, both of them are extremely far behind thanks to all the slowdowns, and thanks to it, Lindsay's already in Mexico by the time they've already started traveling. Once Lindsay arrives in Mexico, though, she has her GPS upside down by accident and ends up running the other direction, leading to her shopping mall and getting a touch distracted going on a massive shopping spree. She would end up leaving the mall and try the walkie talkie again, talking about how she had a nice shopping trip she had, but Noah will remind her of the challenges, which makes her panic and refocus, running into the right direction this time. This means her giant lead would be reduced to only about a 30-second one, as Brick and Noah would show up pretty shortly after she gets on the boat. The final race would begin with Lindsay being in the lead in the water, as Brick is in last with Noah blocking him every single way from getting ahead. Noah was originally planning on trying to beat Lindsay in the final three at first, but if he can go against her in the finale, that'd be a cherry on top. Brick would be pretty annoyed by this and decide to try to have a swordfish fight with Noah commenting how stupid it is, but he's forced to fight back anyway. This would go on for a while, and even though Noah is eventually able to fend Brick off, he ends up getting hit by a sea mine and ends up blasting off again. After that, though, Lindsay's boat would run out of gas, forcing her to paddle, though she's still able to make it to shore first, gaining her the spot in the final two. As Brick is about to come up and take his spot as well, Noah would end up following in Noah's boat ends up falling into Brick's boat, leading to them finishing at the same time and Chris ordering a tiebreaker next episode. Episode 26, or Hawaiian Punch, opens up with some opening confessionals from the final three about how they feel about making it this far. All of them are happy, but for different reasons. Lindsay would be happy to see the world and, have this amazing experience, but also excited to win $1 million on top of it. Brick would be pretty proud of himself for making it this far and winning the right way, this time via not cheating. Lastly, Noah will be pretty glad that he's close to the cash, but worried about the massive brick wall figuratively and literally has to face to even have a chance at winning. After those confessionals, though, the tiebreaker would officially begin. The tiebreaker will be the same one from canon just for sake of simplicity, where they have to free Lindsay and the first to do so wins, but they have dueling sticks to stop each other from doing so. Once it starts, Brick and Noah would each take swings at each other, and to put it bluntly, it's an uphill battle from Noah in every single way. But it doesn't mean he won't try. Noah would try everything to beat Brick or distract him. Cheap shots, distractions, comments to make Brick stumble, but none of them end up working. Brick is eventually able to knock down Noah, getting his dueling stick off of him, and free Lindsay, gaining a spot in the final two. But is kind of worried about it being a jury vote, which, to put it lightly, Brick would be destroyed in. This means that Noah takes third place. The thing is, though, it isn't a jury vote. Instead, Chris gives each of the finalists two helpers to help them through the final challenge, with Lindsay picking Tyler and Beth, which both would be excited to do the final challenge to help Lindsay win. Brick would ask for any volunteers, expecting no one or maybe like one or two people, but Courtney and Zoe would step up. He's a bit surprised considering last season, but Zoe doesn't hold grudges and would state that, alongside Courtney genuinely wanting him to win. Brick would actually appreciate this, and with the helper set, the two teams would begin making their sacrifices and also start the musical number of the episode. Although Versus is no longer the song here, it gets replaced with a song called Winning This War, a more triumphant song where instead of the finalists taking digs at each other, it's more about them getting so far and going all out for this win in this war of a show. In the end, though, Brick would end up winning the first part as he has stronger helpers and generally is more equipped for this style of challenge in my eyes. Each of the finalists are given the reward that they got from episode 24, with both sides being happy they at least got something. Brick would then take his 20-second head start for the final challenge, with Lindsay starting shortly after, revealing her stroller is useless. She would sigh, looking like she has to carry it herself, and struggle doing so. Brick would start getting a large lead up the hill as Lindsay is struggling behind, and he looks back feeling a bit bad, but it's a finale after all, so he would keep running until he arrives at the lava section, allowing Lindsay to catch up because Brick is horrified. With both parties not wanting to risk their lives or the other's lives, both teams would agree to not have anyone cut any ropes. So both sides would just try to hop across the lava rock safely. Though Chris finds this boring and orders Chef to cut the ropes instead. This caused all the finalist helpers to try to stop Chef, but he's able to cut a single rope, releasing a cage which would decide the alternate endings, with the person who it lands on winning in their timeline, as one of their partners would give a motivation speech to not give up, allowing them to push to the end and end up beating the other finalists, as I think they're pretty equal in running speeds. I feel like both people here are pretty solid winners, though with the story that happened, I feel like Brick makes more sense as the canon winner, considering the story. But again, you can take your pick on who you like as a winner. In Brick's ending, the cage would land on him as Lindsay hops along the rocks excited to win, with Brick sighing and giving up on the win. Courtney would try to rally him up, though, but Brick would say how everyone would be happier with Lindsay winning anyway, so what's the point? Courtney would retort that even if people prefer Lindsay winning, it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve it. He fought tooth and nail to get here, so he should take that win. This gives Brick enough motivation to knock down the cage and push to the end, beating Lindsay in the final sprint and winning the season. In Lindsay's ending, she gets the cage to land on her, and Brick would hop along as Beth encourages her to not give up, pointing out how many people want her to win down below. Lindsay would then counter with how Brick did more to earn the win, but Beth points out how Lindsay played super hard too, so she still deserves this. This gives Lindsay enough motivation to push down the cage and push to the end, beating Brick in the final sprint. After the winner is decided, though, Stacy and Ezekiel are about to attack the respective finalists for the cash, but Dawn would stop the two. Thanks to them being fully feral at this point, Dawn is able to use her animal skills to stop the two from attacking anyone, and thus stopping them from taking the cash and jumping into the volcano, meaning that the winner gets to keep the cash prize and no for revenge. Ezekiel or Stacy wouldn't be present. That means the season would end the same afterwards as it did in canon, with the volcano exploding and everyone leaving. But this time, no one's put in the robot suit because no one's in danger enough to be destroyed and put into the robot suit. So, that's neat. And that's the what if. God, this was such a treat to write every step of the way. Jose was such a fun villain to write, and it was also a really nice challenge to try to make him different from Alejandro, both strategically and personality wise, while keeping some things alike with the two to make sure that you know their siblings and kind of like, they are one and the same effectively. Brick was also pretty fun to write, as I know there were a good amount of people who were kind of upset about Brick going villain mode in season 2. So, for those people who were upset about that, I hope that you're happy with this redemption arc. Sure, there are a few things I would change about this what if, but I mean, that's the case for all of them. Like, the only thing I'm upset about this is maybe episode 7. I think that's my weakest episode in this What If, but I'm fine with every other episode. I like every other episode. I'm just fine with episode 7. But anyway, I already kind of have a next What If lined up, which I'm pretty excited for just for the sake of time, and I'm going to probably start working on it pretty soon. But anyway, if you like this content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the summer side.